Chapter 2147. Shinjioli had taught her how to open and seal the Tian Dao bell. She didn't have the sky water poison. Even if she couldn't kill him, it would be good if she could lock him up for tens of thousands of years. If she didn't get rid of this person, he would always be a time bomb in her life. Who knew when he would blow up her beautiful life? She flew all the way and arrived at the periphery of the waterside pavilion in the blink of an eye. Then, she narrowed her eyes and unsheathed the sky regicide. The periphery of the waterside pavilion seemed to have been blown by a hurricane. There were broken walls and broken branches everywhere. In other words, the outermost array had been broken. Ning Xuema quickly circled around the periphery. From time to time, she grabbed the fallen leaves on the ground to look and smell them. She was indeed a special agent. Even the most powerful criminal police couldn't compare with her observation and tracking ability. After circling around in such a small circle, she came to two conclusions based on the current situation. The array here had indeed trapped Luo Jiuqin. And he had already escaped 3 days ago. Had he escaped from Fantian Palace? Or was he hiding in a corner of Fantian Palace, waiting to give her a fatal blow? Ning Xuema never dared to underestimate this person. This person was as cunning as a fox and as ruthless as a wolf. As long as it was related to him, she had to be careful. She had to be careful. Half an hour later. Ning Xuema had changed all the mechanisms. Her heart sank. All the mechanisms set up by her and Shinjioli had been broken. According to the traces at the scene, she could tell when he had broken each mechanism. The earliest mechanism was broken 10 days ago, and the latest one was broken 3 days ago. In other words, when Luo Jiuqin broke out of the array, she had just pacified the invasion of the 4 realms and controlled them. If Luo Jiuqin had gone out at that time, he couldn't have urged the 4 realms to make trouble. He had been trapped in this array for half a month. Breaking the array must have consumed a lot of his strength, and he might have been seriously injured. With that person's scheming, he would not expose himself in front of the people of the 4 realms. So, where would he go? Luo Jiuqin was proficient in the art of transformation. If he wanted to hide, ordinary spies wouldn't be able to find him at all. Logically speaking, this Fantian Palace was the best place for him to rest and recuperate. Perhaps after he left, he would return to Fantian Palace and cultivate in a place with abundant spirit qi to recover. Ning Xuema was also a bold person. She didn't want to miss this opportunity, so she immediately began to search inside and outside Fantian Palace. Luo Jiuqin hadn't inherited the position of the Master of Heaven and Earth yet, so there were many places in the Fantian Palace that he couldn't go to. Therefore, Ning Xuema found those places where he could go. Strangely enough, she had almost dug 3 feet into the ground to search, not even letting go of an ant's nest, but she still couldn't find any trace of Luo Jiuqin. It seemed like that person had really escaped. He had suffered such a big loss in Fantian Palace, so he might have a psychological shadow of this place. That was why he ran away as soon as he was free. Then, where was he most likely to go in the 6 realms? This was a difficult question to answer. Ning Xuema pondered for a moment and decided to look for the Heavenly Dao Stone first. On the lone peak, the wind was biting cold. The Heavenly Dao Stone was still there, but it was still dim and dull, no different from an ordinary stone. Ning Xuema thought of its awesome appearance 50,000 years ago and looked at it now. She almost suspected that the one in front of her was an imposter. Chapter 2148. Heavenly Dao, how have you been? Ning Xuema did not give up and began to try to talk to it. She said a lot of things to it. She praised it, provoked it, and even scolded it. In the end, she even kicked it. But it did not react at all. It stood there quietly, indicating that it was just an ordinary stone. Ning Xuema used all her methods, but it did not even flash, as if it had run out of electricity. What should she do if it played dead at this time? Her heart was full of hope that he could come back within half a year, but now, could it be that she had made so many sacrifices in the past and still could not change her fate? She was bitten by the purple fiend beast for nothing. This bastard stone. He actually used this to trick her. Ning Xuema was angry, and desperate. She kicked the stone several times. This bastard heavenly Tao, she could not see any hope of Shinjiuli coming back. After venting her anger, she sat there powerlessly. If it weren't for the fact that she was still worried about her son, she would have wanted to stay here forever. Suddenly, she seemed to think of something and suddenly jumped up. Luo Jiuqin had already escaped. If he ran to Mo Palace and did something to her son, thinking of this possibility, she immediately turned and left. She disappeared like a gust of wind. The peak returned to its usual calm, as if no one had ever come. Suddenly, the dull white stone glowed slightly under the sunlight. The light was very faint, so faint that it could be ignored if one did not look carefully. At this time, if someone had a pair of X-ray eyes, they would be able to see that the inside of the stone was not as dim as the outside. The inside was actually sparkling and transparent like crystal. Moreover, the space was not small. It was like a shining crystal hall. The crystal pillars in the hall had countless runes flashing on them. And in the center of the hall, there was a lotus. A gigantic crystal lotus. The layers of petals stretched out like a lotus seat, and in the center of the lotus sat a boy wearing a dudu. The boy seemed to be meditating. He looked less than a year old and was extremely beautiful. She had a fair face, fair arms and legs, and even her hair was snow white. Her long eyelashes covered her eyes and face, making her look like a porcelain doll. The lotus petals around the boy also seemed to have runes circulating around them. From time to time, they would flash with a faint light, as if they were providing nourishment for him to recover. On the crystal pillar next to the boy, lines of words slowly flashed, as if explaining something. I didn't break my promise. I didn't play dead. I will fight for this promise with all my strength. He paused for a moment, then continued, Do you think you're growing cabbages by reviving those who had already immortalized within half a year? It can be harvested in one season. A moment later, she kicked me. How disrespectful. How disrespectful. I want to strike her with lightning. Another kick. Heavens, this is the second time I've been treated like this since I was established. His first time was also with her. Damn it. In the end, the stone comforted itself. Only villains and women are hard to deal with. The heavenly Tao will not lower itself to her level. The truth would be revealed one day. By the way, Supreme Divinity, when did you wake up? How depressing. How depressing. How depressing. I don't want to break my promise. But I can't tell her. How depressing. The stone seemed to like talking to itself. It was refreshing inside when the sound of a breeze came from outside. Chapter 2149. Someone was coming. A man floated down from the lonely peak. The man was wearing a striking purple robe. His originally elegant eyes were cold, his hair was a little messy, and his thin lips were a little pale. He looked a little like a wolf. This man was none other than the sub-god Luo Jiuqin. He stood on the lonely peak and looked at the big white stone coldly. Why? Why can't I wake you up? I've already agreed to the 3 conditions of that little brat. I should be able to wake you up and become the guardian of the heavenly Tao. Why don't you recognize me? The heavenly Tao stone stood there proudly. It was a piece of snow-white stone, and it disdained to shine on him. However, it was saying, an evildoer wants to become the guardian of the heavenly Tao. Do you think I'm stupid? What do you want me to do? How can I become the master of this world? Luo Jiuchen's voice was filled with grief and indignation. Stop dreaming. It will never happen. Didn't they say that after the main god ascends, the sub-god can naturally become the main god? Why can't I do it after working so hard for so long? A defective product will always be a defective product. I hate counterfeits. The Heavenly Tao Stone had learned a lot of modern words from Ning Xuemo, so it couldn't help but use them at this moment. Of course, these words were all in its mind. Outside, it was still a cold and hard stone, proudly refusing to give Luo Jiuchen an explanation. Why do I feel that my memory is wrong these days? I vaguely remember that after those people sealed Zi Sha 50,000 years ago, Shinjiuli took revenge on me and plotted against me. That's why I was sealed in the Heavenly Tao Bell. But now, in my memory, that girl and Shinjiuli worked together to seal me in the Heavenly Tao Bell. What's going on? Because that girl changed part of history, your memory is naturally wrong. But I won't explain it to you. Also, there was no array in the Fantian Palace before. Why did it add so many arrays overnight? Is Shinjiuli back? The Heavenly Tao Stone was silent. It was a little nervous. The runes inside flickered, and the lotus petals that were originally in a blooming state gradually closed, wrapping the little boy tightly inside layer by layer. However, he still felt that it wasn't safe enough, so he quietly moved a few more crystal pillars over, hiding the crystal lotus firmly in the depths of the pillars. No. Shinjiuli should have already immortalized. Otherwise, it would be impossible for his original body to appear in this world. One of the incantations that bastard set up was, if he doesn't immortalize, I can't leave the Bell of Heaven. Luo Jiuchen was still muttering to himself. The Heavenly Law Stone gloated. In fact, you have been fooled. Even if Shin Nianma did not let you go, you would still come out of the Heavenly Law Bell. It would just be a year later. Since he didn't come back to life, who set up the mechanism array in Fantian Palace? Heavenly Tao Stone, is it you? Luo Jiuchen also knew how to reason and gradually put a hat on the Heavenly Tao Stone's head. The Heavenly Tao Stone. Luo Jiuchen, you won't be able to understand the reason behind this even if you crack your head. Heavenly Tao Stone, will you never acknowledge me? Luo Jiuchen was getting angrier as he spoke. The Heavenly Tao Stone, yes. Heavenly Tao Stone, you will never know how hard I worked to get this position. How can you treat me like this? Luo Jiuchen's voice was getting colder and colder. Since you are so unfair, why should I fight for this position? Chapter 2150. A sword slowly appeared in his palm. A sword with purple light flashing on it. As soon as it appeared, a ghostly howl could be heard from within. Heavenly Tao Stone. Sky Demon Sword. Luo Jiuchen had actually refined a Sky Demon Sword. The refining process of the Sky Demon Sword was similar to Ning Xuema's Sky Splitter Sword, but it was crueler. It was also more powerful. The Sky Splitter Sword was made from the bones of countless demons, and the main body of the Sky Demon Sword was made from the souls and bones of 100 immortal generals. The resentment attached to it was even more shocking. Once cut by it, the resentment on it would immediately surge in and turn a person into a demon. And a brainless demon that only knew how to kill. This person was crazy. Where did he find so many immortal generals? He was clearly on the verge of going mad. Why did he take out this sword now? The Heavenly Tao Stone was on guard. Luo Jiuchen narrowed his eyes and suddenly smiled. That girl is very capable. She actually turned the situation around and resolved the crisis in just a few days. This is really beyond my expectations. It will be a bit difficult for me to plot against her again. However, the more she is like this, the more I seem to like her and the more I want to get her. I want her to groan and beg for mercy under me, I want her to bloom for me. As a former sub-god, the heavenly Tao stone was very disdainful of him for saying such dirty words. The crystal lotus in its body suddenly swayed slightly. The heavenly Tao stone was caught off guard, and the entire stone swayed along with it. Of course, it was big and didn't sway much. If one didn't observe it carefully, they wouldn't be able to see it. However, it didn't expect Luo Jiuqun to notice it. His eyes lit up, and his gaze became as sharp as needles. Heavenly Tao stone, so you have a reaction. Heavenly Tao stone. Could it lie a little and say that it was blown by the wind? Luo Jiuqun's gaze was like a tangible drill as he sized up the heavenly Tao stone from top to bottom. His gaze became colder and colder, and the heavenly Tao stone became more and more alarmed. Heavenly Tao stone, I will count to 10, and you will shine for me. Otherwise, I will cut you in half right here. Luo Jiuqun slowly raised his sword. The heavenly law stone froze. In the past, it would not be threatened like this. Once someone disrespected it, it would immediately summon tribulation lightning to strike that person. But now, it was using all its power to revive the Divine Lord in its body, and it could not stop. Once it stopped, all its previous efforts would be wasted, and it would really break its promise. He would be scolded to death by that girl. Because of this, it was unable to summon the lightning tribulation. It could only allow this demigod to be arrogant in front of it. It was a heavenly law stone, so it was not afraid of any weapons. However, the heavenly demon sword was too powerful, and its original body might not be able to withstand it. Even if it wasn't split into two, there was still a possibility that there would be a crack on the stone body. However, as a dignified heavenly Tao stone, it would definitely not lower its head to evil forces. It seemed that there was only one of the 36 stratagems left, escape. Thus, Luo Jiuqun, who was counting with a cold voice, saw a scene that he would never forget. That huge white stone seemed to have grown legs as it suddenly rolled over. A gust of wind blew past and it rolled down the cliff. Luo Jiuqun never knew that the stone could move. By the time he reacted, the stone was already falling like a meteor. Chapter 2151. Furthermore, the place where it fell was not the right side of the mountain, but the back. Below the back of the mountain was not an ordinary land, but a sea of stars. When Luo Jiuqun hurriedly chased after it, the stone had already fallen into the sea of stars and became one of the billions of stars. Luo Jiuqun floated in the air and floated back and forth a few times, but he still could not find its whereabouts. There was no other way. Under his feet were all star stones similar to the heavenly Tao stone. He could not tell which one was the real one. He was simply gnashing his teeth. Why did no one ever tell him that this stone could run on its own? Heavenly Tao. If you don't let me become a god, then I will completely become a demon. I must become the ruler of this divine demon continent. Luo Jiuqun shouted. His voice spread through the sea of stars like a mountain's echo. Heavenly Tao stone, I will definitely find you. I will cut you into 17 or 18 pieces. Luo Jiuqun said fiercely. The sea of stars flickered, and countless star stones came and went in the air, as if they were changing their own trajectories. Each stone was like a star, constantly moving, and each had their own trajectories. It was a dazzling sight. In a very remote corner, an inconspicuous star silently fell down, never to be seen again. There were too many star stones under his feet, so Luo Jiuqun naturally did not notice that one. He stood in the air and laughed, so the heavenly Tao stone also has such a cowardly side. Then what is the use of me protecting you? I have been compromising for tens of thousands of years, but it was just a joke. However, it is not too late to understand this point now. Sooner or later, I will make all the living beings in the 6 realms tremble at my feet. Heavenly Tao Stone, you are no exception." His wanton laughter spread far and wide. Originally, he always had the idea of becoming a supreme god in the future, so he was always timid when doing things. When he did bad things, he did not dare to do it personally and had to take many detours. Now, he suddenly thought it through. Once he went all out, there might not be many people in this world who could be his opponent. He was filled with grief and indignation as he laughed loudly. He did not know that his surroundings had quietly changed. Originally, his body was shrouded in a layer of faint purple gold light. Now, that golden light was gradually disappearing and was replaced by a pure purple that flowed like a stream. That purple was extremely dense, faintly tinged with black. The star stones around him seemed to have been stimulated by the murderous aura around him. The speed of their movements suddenly changed, and a gust of wind blew out from the starry sky. The wind grew stronger and stronger, and it gradually formed a hurricane that blew towards the 6 worlds. Little Nianma looked up at the sky. Dark clouds rolled in the sky, and lightning flashed from time to time, as if doomsday was coming. Caw! A beam of red light seemed to tear the sky apart as it stretched across the entire world. As the red light flashed past, it was accompanied by the sound of thunder. It was right above Mo Palace, and it shook the ground beneath their feet. Hua! After the thunder and lightning, heavy rain poured down. It was as if the Milky Way had exploded, and the world was covered in a layer of red. The rain wasn't ordinary rain. Instead, it was blood-red water. The water even carried a faint smell of blood that permeated the entire world. The rain fell on the wizardry barrier above Mo Palace, and the sound of the rain was deafening. The rainwater gathered into a stream on the barrier and flowed freely to the surroundings. Little Nianma clenched his fists. The weather had been like this for half a month. There was no sunlight all day long, and the clouds were always rolling. At a certain time, there would be a bloody rain. Chapter 2152. The blood rain was like a strong acid, corrosive and corrosive. Wherever it went, holes would be corroded. Fortunately, there was a protective barrier set up by Ningxuema above Mo Palace. Otherwise, the newly built Mo Palace would have been corroded into a hornet's nest. This kind of weather was obviously abnormal, but it wasn't just the weather that was abnormal, the people of the 6 realms were also abnormal. First of all, the immortal world was abnormal. The immortal generals who had fought alongside the celestial emperor and were forced to cut off one of their arms had all disappeared within a day. The relatives of those immortal generals thought that it was the demon world's doing, that it was another punishment from the devil master. So they tearfully came to Mo Palace to ask for their captives and knelt in front of Mo Palace, begging the devil master to let them go. At that time, Ningxuema had just returned from Fantian Palace. What she saw was a dense crowd of people begging for her permission. After she appeared, she sent those people away with a few words. Then, she ordered head steward Himu to quickly send people to investigate. The results of the investigation were shocking. According to the families of the missing generals, they had received a transmission from General Manager Himu when they were recuperating at home. Then, they hurriedly went out alone and never returned. The family waited anxiously for a long time, but when no one came back, they were worried and went out to look for them, but they found nothing. General Manager Himu swore that he had never sent a transmission to them. There must be a misunderstanding. Ningxuema naturally believed General Manager Himu. Her first suspect was Luo Jiuqin. But what was Luo Jiuqin's purpose? However, no one could guess what was going on. The demon world had always been very good at finding people. Ningxuema immediately sent experts to investigate the whereabouts of the missing generals. 3 days later, they finally found them. However, they didn't find living people, but corpses. Corpses that had died extremely tragic and strange deaths. The lumbar vertebrae of all the corpses had been removed, and not even a trace of their souls was left. Ning Xiuma's heart sank. This was obviously caused by cultivating some kind of evil art or refining some kind of evil treasure. She immediately sent people to look for Luo Jiuqin's whereabouts in the 6 realms, but that person seemed to have disappeared. Ning Xiuma used countless methods but still couldn't find him. However, people began to disappear frequently in the 6 realms, never to be found again. The weather in the 6 realms became more and more abnormal day by day. Then, there was lightning and blood rain. The enemy was in the dark while he was in the light. How could it be easy to find someone who was good at transformation in the 6 realms? In the past half a month, everyone in the 6 realms was in danger, and all kinds of rumors were flying around. These days, Ning Xiuma had been busy with the investigation and did not have much time to accompany her son. Little Nianma also knew that he should not be a burden to his mother during this critical period, so he had been obediently staying in Mo Palace. There was a barrier around Mo Palace, and the security at the entrance was extremely tight. People from the outside would not be able to get in. As long as little Nianma stayed in Mo Palace, he would be safe. Apart from practicing and studying, he would also take a stroll in the garden. Right now, he was walking in the garden of Mo Palace. Because they had not seen the sun for a long time, the flowers in the garden looked withered and listless. This damned Luo Jiuqin. Look at what he had done to the 6 realms. If it were not for this bastard, perhaps he and his mother would have a better life. Little Nianma sat down against a stone and took out a book. When he was about to revise the parts that he did not understand, he heard footsteps behind him. He turned around and saw General Manager Heimu standing not far behind him. Chapter 2153. Young Master, are you unhappy? Head Butler Heimu asked with a smile as he approached him. Little Nianma was a little listless. Of course, I am unhappy because I am stuck in the palace every day. It is all Luo Jiuqin's fault. He was a little surprised. Heimu, aren't you talking to my mother in the front hall? Why are you here all of a sudden? Have you finished your discussion? Head Butler Heimu smiled casually. Yes, it is not much. It was just a few words. Young Master, do you want to go out? Little Nianma lay on the stone behind him and crossed his legs. He was bored with a piece of grass in his mouth. Of course, who wants to be stuck in the same place every day? For the past few days, every time his mother went out, she would leave him in Mo Palace, and the 8 divine beasts would never leave her side. When his mother was in the Mo Palace, she had to deal with a lot of things. Most of the time, she still liked to bring her son with her. However, Shen Nianma was only a child who was not even 1 year old. There were many things that he did not understand, and it was very boring. Naturally, he would get impatient and occasionally run out to play in the garden. He had walked around the garden many times, and he remembered the position of every stone in the garden. In fact, there was nothing to play with. If it weren't for that bastard Luo Jiuqin hiding in the dark like a mouse, his mother would have taken him out to play long ago. Head Butler Heimu showed sympathy. Young Master, why don't I take you out to play? Little Nianma's eyes lit up, but he immediately shook his head. No, my mother does not allow me to go out. I can secretly take you out to play for half a day. The great devil will not find out. Head Butler Heimu tried to persuade him. Little Nianma was stunned. He looked up and stared at him. Suddenly, he jumped up. No. You are not Heimu. Head Butler Heimu frowned slightly. Young Master, I am Heimu. What happened to you? He approached him as he spoke. Little Nianma quickly retreated. He waved his hand, and a shiny short sword was unsheathed. With a flick of his finger, a blue light flew straight to the sky. His set of movements was extremely smooth. The blue light was used as an alarm. As long as it exploded in the sky, his mother would sense it and quickly appear by his side. Unexpectedly, just as his blue light flew into the air, Chief Steward Himu waved his sleeve. Like a rolling cloud, it actually wrapped around the blue light that hadn't yet exploded. The blue light exploded within his sleeve, but not a single flame came out. Little thing, you're really alert. Manager Himu smiled as he watched him approach step by step. However, do you think you can escape from the palm of my hand? This time, you have to come with me even if you don't want to. Suddenly, his hand shot out like a snake and tried to grab Shen Yanma. Shen Yanma suddenly took a step forward and avoided the attack at the critical moment. He turned around and ran, shouting as he ran, "Mother! Mother!" Luo Jiuqin had entered Imo Palace. Luo Jiuqin has entered Imo Palace. Her voice was sharp and pierced through the clouds. That person was Luo Jiuqin. He also did not expect that he would miss his target. Only then did he remember that Ning Shuima seemed to know a very special footwork to escape. It seemed that she had taught this footwork to her son. Little thing, you actually recognized me. You are not stupid, but it is useless for you to shout. I have already set up a soundproof wizardry barrier here. No one can hear you. Luo Jiuqin chased after him. Chapter 2154. There was a huge gap between their abilities. Although little Nianma was able to run for more than 10 meters with his special footwork, Luo Jiuqin still managed to catch up with him. Luo Jiuqin laughed. Little thing, you better follow me obediently. He reached out and grabbed one of little Nianma's arms. Ouch! Ouch! Something on little Nianma's waist suddenly made a sharp noise. At the same time, his body suddenly burst into a circle of red light. Luo Jiuqin felt as if he had been electrocuted. His wrist went numb, and he subconsciously let go. Little Nianma took the opportunity to roll out. He rolled too quickly and hit a rock with a bang. Almost at the same time, a white light appeared out of nowhere and the ground under him suddenly split open to form a large hole. He screamed and fell directly into the large hole. Luo Jiuqin was about to pick him up again, but when he saw the white light, he froze. Shen Yanma had already rolled into the big hole and disappeared. He looked into the hole, but it was dark and he could not see anything. He was afraid that the big hole was a trap arranged by Ning Shuima. He hesitated in front of the big hole, but the big hole closed in an instant. He was stunned and was wondering if he should use the underground drilling spell to go in and take a look. Suddenly, there was a soft sound not far away. He froze. The wizardry barrier that he set to block all sound was broken. Then, he heard Ning Shuima's voice coming from afar. Nianma. Luo Jiuqin did not want to face Ning Shuima at this time. He flashed and flew straight to the sky. Luo Jiuqin. Ning Shuima had not arrived, but she had already swung her sword. Luo Jiuqin's body flashed out of thin air and avoided Ning Shuima's fatal attack. He did not want to fight. He still rose into the sky and raised his hand to tear the wizardry barrier. He had already flashed out like lightning and disappeared in the blink of an eye. Only his laughter could be heard in the air. Little Shuima, don't worry. We will have the chance to meet sooner or later. When he said the last word, his voice was very far away. It was still raining blood outside, and the raindrops were blowing in through the torn enchantment. Ning Shuima's face was pale. She raised her hand and sealed the barrier again. Although she had only met Luo Jiuqin briefly, she could tell that little Nianma was not in his hands. At this time, her priority was naturally to find her son. Everything else could wait. Because the enchantment was torn open, an ear-piercing alarm sounded from Mo Palace. Countless figures rushed in this direction. The ones at the very front were none other than Manager Heimu and the 8 divine beasts. Cheong Chi's loud voice could be heard from afar. What's going on? Someone is invading. Ning Xuema took a deep breath and said solemnly, Luo Jiuchen was here. He tore open the barrier and escaped again. His target this time was little Nianma. However, he failed to take Nianma away. She was concise and went straight to the point. While she was talking, she quickly looked for the whereabouts of her son nearby. She had specially installed a special alarm on her son. As long as someone caught her son involuntarily, the alarm would automatically go off. Not only would it pop up a spell to attack the kidnapper, but it would also let Ning Xuema know immediately and quickly locate him. Manager Heimu and the 8 divine beasts were surprised and also a little puzzled. How did that bastard Luo Jiuchen get in? We have set up a divine mirror at the entrance of the palace. As long as someone with a divine aura sneaks in, he will be revealed. Chapter 2155. Ning Xuema said in a low voice, Luo Jiuchen has been possessed by the devil. There is no longer any celestial aura in him. Although it was only a short encounter, Ning Xuema could still see the dark aura around Luo Jiuchen. The demigod possessed by the devil. General Manager Heimu and the others looked at each other in shock. If the demigod was not possessed by the devil, he would have a lot of scruples in his actions and would not do anything out of the ordinary. However, once he was completely possessed by the devil, he would have no scruples in his actions and would be able to do whatever he wanted. Luo Jiuchen's kung fu was close to the peak. If he used it to practice some evil spells, his future cultivation would be unimaginable. Ning Xuema naturally thought of this as well. She closed her eyes slightly. Luo Jiuchen would be the strongest opponent in her life. Sooner or later, they would have a life-and-death battle. She had to make the heavenly water poison as soon as possible, but she still lacked 2 special herbs. No. No. Ning Xuema, the 8 mythological beasts, and General Manager Heimu turned the entire garden upside down, but they could not find little Nianma. Ning Xuema's face was pale, and her hands and feet were cold. Where did the child go? Luo Jiuchen did not take him away, so how could he disappear? Did Luo Jiuchen kill him? The child was her only hope to survive. If something happened to him again, Ning Xuema almost did not dare to think about it anymore. There were a lot of things to deal with these days. She was busy from morning to night every day. She woke up earlier than the chicken and slept later than the dog. She had to deal with all kinds of affairs. Even so, she often had insomnia. In the dead of the night, Shinjuli's shadow would always appear in her heart, making her feel as if she was drowning. Lovesickness was like a knife. If she did not think about it, it would be unforgettable, but she had no place to talk about it. In fact, she also wanted to get drunk. She also wanted to wantonly get drunk and sleep like many frustrated girls. She also wanted to escape from this bitter and fucked up reality. However, she could not. She still had her son to protect and the devil world to protect. Luo Jiuchen was still eyeing her in the dark, trying to take her down. The bloody reality did not allow her to relax in the slightest. In order to pacify and stabilize the hearts of the people, she could not even reveal the slightest bit of dispirited emotions. She had been desperately persevering and working hard. She didn't want her son to be disappointed, hurt, or cry again, but now, his son had disappeared. The only thing she could sense was that her son was still alive. He couldn't sense anything else. She had installed a tracking device on her son, but it seemed to have malfunctioned. She couldn't sense it at all. Did Luo Jiuchen have other helpers? He came to distract her, but the helper took her son away. Her heart was on fire. Fortunately, Mo Palace would automatically shut down once the alarm rang. If Luo Jiuchen had help, then the other party shouldn't be able to escape the palace. Search the entire palace. Little Nianma did not expect to fall into a black hole. The hole was extraordinarily deep, and it took him a few minutes to reach the bottom. Fortunately, his skin looked soft and tender now, but he had already trained his muscles and bones to not be afraid of bumps, so he was not injured in the process of rolling down. He got up dizzily and patted the robe on his body. He was still a little shaken. He was almost caught by that bastard. Fortunately, there was a hole here. Chapter 2156. He looked up and saw that it was pitch black. He could not see the top, and Luo Jiuchen did not chase after him. Was he safe for the time being? He heaved a sigh of relief. The cave was pitch black as if it had not seen sunlight for thousands of years. With his current night vision, he could not see anything clearly. He could only touch it with his hands. He touched the surrounding. The walls were hard, cold, and a little smooth. It seemed that something had crashed down and created such a huge pit. Shen Nianma scratched his head. He was very familiar with the garden above. He even remembered how many ant nests there were. How could he not know that there was such a strange cave here? He did not know that the cave above had been closed. He was afraid that Luo Jiuchen would chase after him, so he did not dare to stay in the cave for long. The ground under his feet was getting harder and harder. Slowly, he began to see a light blue light. A moment later, he found himself in an icy blue crystal cave. The walls on both sides and the top of his head were crystal clear. The crystal tunnel was still long and narrow. He did not know where it led to. Children were born to love adventure, and little Nianma was no exception. He continued to move forward along the tunnel. He was surprised to find that the crystal tunnel was colorful. First, it was blue, then yellow, and then red. There were red, orange, yellow, green, blue, and purple colors. The deeper he went, the purer the crystals that formed the cave walls. Finally, there was a bright light in front of his eyes. There was a bright crystal hall in front of him. Little Nianma had never seen such a beautiful and magnificent crystal hall. The hall was formed naturally. The shape was not regular, but it was full of a natural wild charm. The hall was octagonal. There were crystals of different colors in the hall. The purity was unprecedentedly high. The blue ones were like water, the red ones were like fire, and the black ones were like ink. Every one of them was crystal clear. It was so beautiful that people could hardly take their eyes off it. After all, little Nianma was well educated. He could vaguely see that this seemed to be a natural crystal array. It was well known that crystals gathered energy, and the crystal cave had a very strong energy gathering effect. The center of the crystal array should be the energy gathering point. It could absorb the energy from the crystals from all directions. Generally speaking, the crystals in the center of the array should be the purest and most valuable. They should also have the most energy. However, at this moment, what stood in the center of the crystal formation was not a crystal, but a white stone. Moreover, it was a stone with missing corners and edges. Its shape was too ordinary. It looked like a mountain rock that could be seen everywhere in the mountains. Other than its snow-white color, there was nothing special about it. Compared to the countless crystals around it, it was like an ugly duckling that had fallen into a flock of swans. It was an eye-catching ugliness. Little Nianma circled the white stone twice and reached out to touch it again. This white stone looked like a stone and felt like a stone. No matter how you looked at it, it was actually a big stone. So ugly. Little Nianma commented and shook his head. It's so ugly. He added. The ordinary-looking white stone, strange, why would such an ugly stone occupy the center position? It feels like a sparrow occupying a phoenix's nest. Little Nyenma complained again. White stone. Little Nyenma raised his hand and knocked on the white stone with his knuckles. Chapter 2157. Little Nyenma raised his little hand and knocked on the white stone with his knuckles. He tilted his head to listen and shook his head. It does not sound like a beautiful jade wrapped in stone. The white stone was speechless. What was a beautiful jade? It was 10,000 times more precious than a beautiful jade. No, it was 100 million times more precious. It resisted the urge to flash a bright light and blind the little kid's eyes. It continued to play the role of a stone quietly. This white stone was the heavenly law stone. It fell from the Fantion Palace and quietly drilled into the ground. The spiritual energy underground was not as strong as the Fantion Palace, and it needed to accumulate energy to maintain the resurrection of the Divine Lord in its body. Therefore, it drilled into the ground to find a crystal cave that could provide it with energy. It was the heavenly law stone, the ancestor of all stones. Naturally, it was very sensitive to crystals. Soon, it found it here. It slightly polished the place and transformed it into a crystal array. It squatted in the middle of the array and absorbed the energy of the crystals. It sincerely felt that it was giving these crystals face by squatting in the center of these crystals. The crystals should be in awe of its presence. It was these crystals that were not worthy of it, not that it was not worthy of these crystals. It thought that it was the most primitive, mysterious, and beautiful stone in the world. However, it did not expect that one day, it would be despised and called ugly. Could the word ugly be related to it? Could it? Could it? Could it? The little kid had no taste. It was the heavenly law stone. It would not lower itself to the same level as a child. The heavenly law stone resisted the urge to flood its mind. It was still there with an unfathomable look. After all, the heavenly law stone was the only magical stone left in the world. Generally, it could control the land wherever it went. It could quickly sense everything that happened on the land. When little Nyenma was in danger, it did not want to intervene. However, the Divine Lord in its body seemed to have sensed it. In an instant, it controlled the stone to use the earth-splitting technique to suck little Nyenma in. Although he was sucked in, the heavenly law stone did not want to communicate with the little kid. Therefore, it let him wander around and found him here. There were crystals everywhere. Any one of them was priceless. It could be used to make many energy weapons and magical weapons. The heavenly law stone thought that the little kid would be cheering when he saw the best crystals in the cave. However, it did not expect that he only looked around the hall and turned his attention to the stone. They even circled around it. The heavenly law stone was a little scared by his spinning, but it was still a little relieved. This child was indeed the son of the supreme divinity. He was able to tell that the heavenly law stone was extraordinary. However, it did not expect that the little fellow would give it an ugly evaluation. The heavenly law stone's expression didn't change, but its heart suffered 10,000 damage. He had the illusion that his worldview had collapsed. In fact, it had already sensed that Luo Jiuqin had left and that Ning Shuema and the others were looking for the child, but it still refused to make any reaction. That little girl had scolded it and even kicked it a few times, hurting its dignity as the heavenly Tao stone. Then, it would let her suffer while losing her son. As for the little thing in front of him, once it had wandered around enough, it would probably find its way out on its own. How long could a child play in a crystal hole? At most, he would pick up a few crystals. Therefore, the heavenly law stone did not take Shin Nyenma seriously. He even secretly made up his mind that when this little thing tried to pry open the crystals, he would make sure that the surrounding crystals were firm enough so that the little guy would not be able to pry them open. Chapter 2158. Sure enough, Shin Yinma wandered around the hall looking for the crystals. Soon, he found a red crystal pillar and placed his little hand on it. Apparently, he wanted to break the crystal pillar with his power. However, the red crystal pillar was very strong. He could not break it with ordinary methods. Swoosh! Little Nyenma took out a shiny dagger and cut the bottom of the crystal pillar. Ha ha ha! He actually used a weapon to cut the crystal. Did he think that it was as easy as cutting tofu? Did he know that the crystal was very fragile? Even if a sword could cut it, it would also break the pillar. It could not be used at all. This was common sense, but the little guy did not know. He was still a child. The stone was dying of laughter. The heavenly law stone was overjoyed. However, the heavenly law stone was not amused for long. If it had eyes, it would have opened them wide at this moment. It saw that the dagger in little Nyenma's hand had cut the incredibly beautiful red crystal off neatly. What kind of dagger was that? The heavenly law stone's attention shifted to the dagger in little Nyenma's hand. It was surprised to find that the material of the dagger was very special. It was actually made of an extremely rare meteorite iron. Moreover, it was attached with an extremely strong power. Any hard object would be cut by this dagger. It did not expect that he could own such a weapon at such a young age. Needless to say, it was given to her son by Ning Xuemo. She had spent a lot of money on this son of hers. While the heavenly law stone was murmuring in its heart, it suddenly felt something. When it pulled its attention back, it saw little Nyenma holding the crystal and walking around it. The heavenly law stone was confused. This crystal is the most beautiful and rare. This position should belong to it. However, it is occupied by such a stupid stone. Little Nyenma talked to himself. The heavenly law stone was shocked. Little Nyenma carefully put the crystal aside and then walked directly to the heavenly law stone. The heavenly law stone was alert. What was he trying to do? Little Nyenma channeled his power of telekinesis into his hands. He opened his arms and hugged the white stone. It was a small corner. The white stone was not small. He was too short to carry it. It was being hugged. It was being hugged by a little kid. The heavenly Tao stone subconsciously wanted to send this little thing flying, but it was afraid that if it didn't control its strength well, it would directly smash this child into a meat patty. While Gu Shizhou was struggling, little Nyenma's two little arms had already hugged it and shook it vigorously. The heavenly Tao stone snorted. This little fellow's strength was indeed not small, but he wanted to shake it. That was undoubtedly an ant trying to shake a tree. Not to mention him, even if that bastard Luo Jiuchen came, it would be extremely difficult to shake it. As long as it didn't want to move its nest, even 10 tyrannosaurs wouldn't be able to move it. Little Nyenma's face turned red. He tried for a long time, but he still could not move the eyesore away. Finally, he was angry. With a whoosh, he took out his dagger. Heavenly Tao stone. This little bastard wanted to chop it up. Did he know that he would be struck by lightning if he dared to disrespect the heavenly Tao stone? Swoosh! Little Nyenma did not listen to it. The dagger flashed in the air and slashed at the base of the heavenly law stone. Obviously, he wanted to cut off the top of the stone and put his broken crystal at that position to absorb the essence from all sides. The heavenly law stone immediately guessed his purpose and did not know whether to laugh or cry. Chapter 2159. It was true that the newborn calf was not afraid of the tiger. The ignorant were fearless. Paw! The red crystal that had been placed properly suddenly broke into pieces and scattered all over the ground. Needless to say, it was the work of the Heavenly Law Stone. It only needed to use a little bit of its power to shatter the red crystal. Little Nyenma was shocked. He turned around and realized that the red crystal was broken. There was no wind in the cave, and he clearly placed the red crystal firmly. How could it suddenly fall to the ground and break into pieces? He did not care anymore. He had to move the white stone away first and then look for other red crystals. His mother's birthday was coming soon, and he wanted to use the red crystal to make a sword for his mother. Ordinary crystals were too brittle, but if he chose a good material and placed it in the center of the formation, the crystal would gather a large amount of energy and undergo fission. He could then use a spell to stimulate it, and it should be able to become as hard as cold iron, which would not shatter easily. Little Nyenma's idea was very good, so he turned around and wanted to cut the stone. The Heavenly Law Stone was speechless. Little Nyenma did not care about it and cut the stone's foot. After a loud noise, the dagger did cut the stone, but it was quickly reflected back. Not only did the sharp dagger bend, but it also broke one of Little Nyenma's little hands. It was bleeding. Little Nyenma felt a strong force rebounding back, and he took a few steps back. He looked at the dagger in his hand in disbelief and then looked at his bleeding hand. This inconspicuous white stone was actually so hard. It was the first time he saw such a hard stone. Little Nyenma did not want to admit defeat. He stood there for a moment and suddenly rushed forward again. His little hand was stained with blood. His original intention was to use his psychokinesis to test how hard the rock was. Unexpectedly, just as his little hand touched it, the rock suddenly twisted and turned into a whirlpool. It pulled his little hand abruptly. Little Nyenma's vision was blurred. After a flash of light, he found that he was in another place. It was the best crystal cave. Dazzling rainbow-colored crystals surrounded him. These crystals were stacked together in a certain order, forming countless indescribable patterns of formations. Each pattern was like a flowing talisman, spinning non-stop in the surroundings like water waves. It flashed with strange and variegated lights. The crystals here were definitely the best of the best. Compared to the crystals here, the red crystal he was holding just now was like dirt. Little Nyenma fell directly into the room. He was still a little confused. After he got up, he looked around and was a little surprised. Was this the interior of the white stone? That's not right. The white stone is only the size of a round table, but this space is unbelievably big. It was at least several thousand feet wide. It was even bigger than the crystal hall he had seen earlier. What kind of place had he fallen to? Little Nyenma could not help but wander around the cave to observe. The Heavenly Tao Stone, however, froze. It didn't want to swallow this little guy. No one had been able to enter its interior. Even Shinjioli had been nurtured by the Heavenly Tao Stone using its own divine power to gather the other party's soul, and now, this little guy had run in. He ran in. What was going on? What kind of physique did this little guy have? How could he have such an ability? The Heavenly Tao Stone was filled with questions, and the crystal pillar inside it was filled with question marks. Chapter 2160. Of course, the question mark was also a special language of the heavenly law. Only a few people could understand it, so it was not afraid of being seen by Little Nyenma. Little Nyenma was wandering around in the crystal cave. Naturally, he saw the strange symbols on the crystal pillars. He only thought that it was a kind of spell, so he did not care at all. He was looking at the various crystal pillars in the cave, thinking about which one looked the best. After he had chosen it, he could directly take it away without having to put it in the middle of the crystal cave to condense it. He walked around and suddenly found that these crystal pillars seemed to be arranged in a kind of array. All the crystal energy was also concentrated in the center of the array. The energy here was even more amazing. So, what good things were hidden in the middle of this place? Little Nyenma was very knowledgeable and knew a lot about arrays. After a few rounds, he finally bypassed the crystal pillars. The scene in front of him made his eyes widen. Crystal lotus. He saw a huge crystal lotus bud. The lotus was tightly closed, and its shape was very lifelike. Even the color was like a real lotus. The only difference was that the petals of this lotus were crystal clear. The veins on the petals were clear and shining slightly. It was strangely huge, at least 10 times bigger than an ordinary lotus. At a glance, there seemed to be dew rolling on it. It was so fresh that people could not wait to touch and smell it. Little Nyenma did not know why, but when he saw this lotus bud, he felt very familiar with it, especially when the lotus had a faint cold fragrance. This fragrance, his little heart suddenly began to thump wildly. His pair of eyes were wide open. He could smell his father's breath on this crystal lotus. Father. Father's breath. How long had it been since he smelled this breath? How long had it been? Obviously, it was only a few months, but he felt that it had been a few centuries. When he was in the Fantion Palace, every time he missed his father, he would secretly go to his father's bedroom to smell the remaining breath there. However, the breath was getting lighter and lighter, and in the end, it was almost too faint to be smelled. He even secretly hid a robe of his father and put it in his small storage space. When he missed his father very much, he would secretly take out the robe to smell it, and then hurriedly put it back. However, later on, the breath on the robe also faded. Especially after he and his mother were forced to leave Fantion Palace, it was even harder for him to smell his father's aura. Although he didn't say it out loud these days, he still yearned for it in his heart. He didn't expect to smell it here. The fragrance of the lotus was also very faint. If one didn't walk in front of it, they wouldn't be able to smell it. Even so, it was enough for little Nyenma to be excited. He walked over step by step, greedily smelling the scent of the lotus. This smell was too good. It smelled so good that he wanted to cry, and his nose felt sore. Father. Little Nyenma uttered 2 words as if he had been wronged. His big eyes were covered with a layer of tears. He missed his father. Speaking of which, when would father return? The heavenly Tao stone displayed a bunch of exclamation marks. This brat could actually tell that his father was hidden in the lotus bud. It was too amazing. Little Nyenma could not help but gently press on the petals of the lotus flower. He was shocked. This petal felt too real. As if it was real. This lotus bud actually emitted the same fragrance as his father's. It must be a celestial flower. Chapter 2161. His mother seemed to like lotuses very much. Every time she saw a lotus, she would stop and look at it for a long time. Xiao He used to live in the side courtyard, but his mother treated her like a treasure. Later, when his mother heard that Xiao He was dead, she was sad for a long time. It was obvious that she loved lotuses to a certain extent. This time, if he could carry the lotus out of the cave and give it to his mother, she would be overjoyed. This should be the birthday present he wanted to give to his mother. However, the lotus was too big. It was 3 times bigger than him. He was afraid that he could not carry it. Little Nyenma's mind was full of thoughts of picking the flower and bringing it home. His 2 little hands rubbed the petals, trying to get more of the flower's fragrance. There was still blood on his little hands. The blood gradually soaked into the petals. The petals that had been closed shook slightly, and a faint white light emerged. Little Nyenma was stunned for a moment, and his eyes were wide open. The flower was going to bloom. If such a beautiful lotus really bloomed, would it be more beautiful and fragrant? Little Nianma looked at the flower with anticipation. The only worry in his heart was that if the flower bloomed, it would be bigger, and it would be more difficult for him to carry it. The lotus really showed signs of blooming. The top of the bud had begun to tremble and then stretched out little by little. Little Nianma could not help but hold his breath, but soon, he carefully exhaled breath by breath. The smell was too good. He did not want to miss a mouthful. A moment later, little Nianma was stunned again. The flower was obviously about to bloom, but when it was half open, it stopped moving. It even showed signs of gathering, and the fragrance was getting weaker. Oh, why did it stop? It was uncomfortable to be half open. Little Nianma was very uncomfortable. He could not help but go forward. Hey, Xiaolian, are you not going to open it? Open it, open it. The flower shook. Even the heavenly law stone shook. When the heavenly law stone shook, the whole space shook. Little Nianma was shaken by the shaking. He quickly held on to a crystal pillar next to him to steady himself. What happened? Was it an earthquake? He looked around vigilantly. Fortunately, the space only shook a little, and there was no more movement. He turned to look at the lotus again. His little face was a little gloomy. The half-open lotus was tightly closed again. It was even tighter than before. Is this flower shy? It can't be. Little Nianma pondered for a moment. He tiptoed and approached the flower. His two little hands peeled the gap between the petals. Little Lien, bloom. Bloom, the lotus trembled again, as if it was disgusted by him. The heavenly Tao stone couldn't bear to look at it anymore, and all sorts of gibberish appeared on the crystal pillar. The lotus seemed to be connected to little Nianma. The more he wanted to peel it, the tighter the lotus closed. Little Nianma could even feel the force of the closing petals. His strength was not as strong as the closing force of the lotus. Besides, little Nianma was worried that the petals of the lotus would be damaged, so he did not dare to use his full strength. He tried for a while, but to no avail. Disappointed, he took 2 steps back. He sniffed his little hand. The scent of the flower on his little hand was already very faint, as if it had been absorbed by the flower again. This flower was too stingy. She couldn't even bear to leave the fragrance for him. Little Nianma was a little angry and threatened, Xiaolian, if you don't open up, I will cut you with my sword. He took out the dagger and waved it. Heavenly Tao stone. Oh no, this brat wants to kill his father. Chapter 2162. However, why did it feel so excited as if it was watching a good show? It actually wanted to watch the father and son fight against each other. Of course, the flower was not threatened by him and did not move at all. In fact, little Nianma was not afraid of anything. When he was angry, he dared to cause any trouble and kill anyone. In the past, if there was a flower that was so disobedient, he would probably kill it. However, he did not have the heart to do it now. It was not a good word to destroy a flower. He would rather not do such a thing. His mother said that boys should know how to be gentle with women. He would rather not kill the flower. Little Lien. Little Nianma tried to reason with it, but as soon as he opened his mouth, the petals retracted even more. He suddenly had an idea. Did the lotus not like this name? That's right. Although it's a flower bud, it's so big. Little Nianma thought for a moment and finally found a suitable sentence. Big Lien, the flower was stunned. The heavenly law stone had the urge to burst into laughter. The surrounding crystal pillars were full of ha 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 characters. Big Lien, can you open up a little? Let me have a look. Let me have a look. You don't know that I really like lotuses. My mother also likes them. Recently, she has been standing by the lotus pond in Mo Palace for half a day. She even went to the celestial kingdom to get the celestial lotus. However, no matter how beautiful they are not half as beautiful as you. If my mother sees you, she will be very happy. She will be very good to you. Although the lotus still did not move, the petals seemed to be less tightly closed. My mother has been very busy these days. Many people forced her, and she even died once. Later, she was reborn and saved the devil kingdom. However, she was not happy. She sleeps so late every day, but she has to wake up so early. There are a lot of things to deal with every day. It is really tiring. It will be her birthday in 10 days. I want to give her a gift to make her happy. Speaking of this, little Nyenma was a little sad. I have not seen her really happy these days. She really misses my father. She even called his name in her dreams and cried. The lotus trembled slightly. Dilian, mother said that father went to a very, very far place to cultivate in seclusion. She also said that he would only return after a very, very long time. I really miss my father. I feel like he doesn't want me anymore. He doesn't want my mother anymore. Otherwise, why hasn't he come back yet? It has been a long time. Little Nyenma began to sniffle. When he was in Mo's palace, even if he missed his father, he didn't dare to show it. He didn't want his mother to be even sadder when she saw it, so he held back his tears. Now that there was no one else in this space other than him, he couldn't help but talk to the lotus flower. Of course, as he spoke, he also touched on his sore spot. He couldn't help but cry as he clung onto the lotus petals. Large teardrops dripped down along the petals. The petals seemed to have been scalded by his tears, and they bloomed slightly. Little Nyenma had been paying attention to the reaction of the lotus petals. When he saw the reaction, he was delighted. It seemed like this lotus needed to be watered by his tears. Little Nyenma was already good at crying. Coupled with the fact that he was really sad, he murmured while rolling his tears. He looked so pitiful. His voice was getting more and more choked, but the more he talked, the more he described himself as the most pitiful baby in the world. Chapter 2163. The lotus continued to cry as he tugged at it. It showed no signs of opening, nor did it show any signs of closing again. Little Nyenma suddenly thought of something. Xiaohe's mother used to ask him to water it with a drop of blood every day. She said that it would grow stronger. What about the big lotus now? Little Nyenma's eyes fell on his hand again. There were still some blood stains on his hand. Of course, there were also some mud stains. He used his little bloody hand to press on the bud just now, so the bud emitted a circle of white light and was about to open. Perhaps, his blood had the effect of promoting the blooming of the flower. Why did it stop opening halfway? The more he pulled, the more it closed. Lotus was an extremely pure creature. Did it dislike his hands for being too dirty? Little Nyenma immediately cast a cleaning spell on himself to make himself feel refreshed. Then, he used his fingertip to produce a big round drop of blood. He raised his hand and let the blood drop fall into the half-closed part of the flower bud. This was not ordinary blood. It was the blood of his heart. Although it was only a drop, the effect had always been very strong. When Xiaohe was dying, little Nyenma used this method to make her feel better for a few days. As soon as his blood dropped into the bud trembled slightly. A moment later, it emitted a circle of white light, and the petals slowly bloomed layer by layer. Little Nyenma widened his eyes. Everything in front of him was like a slow-motion movie. He looked at the huge lotus bud slowly blooming, and the cold fragrance was getting stronger. The scene when the petals bloomed was very beautiful. It was indescribably pleasing to the eye. Little Nyenma crossed his arms and looked at it in a relaxed manner. He wished that he could get a video recorder like what his mother said. He searched around in his storage space but could not find anything suitable. When he looked up again, his eyes suddenly widened as if he was struck by lightning. Amidst the layers of petals that gradually bloomed, a person appeared. First, it was the snow-white hair, then the picturesque eyebrows, then the shoulders, and finally the chest. Shen Nyenma stood there as if he was petrified. His little mouth was slightly open. He raised his hand to rub his eyes to take a look. Then, he rubbed his eyes again in disbelief. There was a little baby wrapped in the lotus. Moreover, it was an unbelievably beautiful baby. He had snow-white arms and legs that were as white as lotuses, and he was wearing a silver-white dudu that was faintly glowing. His snow-white hair was draped over his shoulders, covering most of his body. The baby's eyes were slightly downcast, and its light red lips were slightly pursed. Due to its beautiful appearance and the fact that it was sitting in the lotus with a bellyband and lotus petals covering its front, little Nyenma could not tell if it was a boy or a girl. The little child looked less than a year old. His eyes were closed and he sat there motionlessly. His long eyelashes covered his eyes and face and one could almost count them one by one. Was this a real person or a fake one? Little Nyenma held his breath and took a closer look. The baby's chest rose and fell slightly. It was breathing. Ah, it's actually true. It's a real person. Ever since little Nyenma was born, he had been wandering around with his parents or wandering around with various mythological beasts. He had never met anyone of the same age as him. Now that he suddenly met one, he was both surprised and delighted. What was even rarer was that this little baby looked to be only about 1 year old, much younger than him. The corners of little Nyenma's mouth curled up into a smile. Every child wanted to be an adult, and Shen Nyenma was no exception. Chapter 2164. Unfortunately, he was the only child in the Mo palace. Moreover, he was protected by the 8 mythological beasts. Everyone treated him like a child. Now, he finally found a child who was younger than him. Moreover, judging by his attire, little Nyenma vaguely felt that the attire of the child in front of him was very similar to the mythological figure that his mother had told him about. Was this a new gift from his mother? Therefore, he looked at the child and asked, Neza. Hong higher. Ginseng baby. The child in the lotus still had his eyes closed. There was no movement at all, just like a small jade sculpture. Could it be that he was mistaken? Was this a nephrite jade sculpture? Little Nyenma took a step forward and reached out his little hand, wanting to touch it. His mother said that there was a kind of robot that looked no different from a human on the surface. However, if one touched it, they could still feel it. The child in the lotus looked like a snow sculpture. It was so delicate that it seemed to melt when the wind blew. Little Nyenma did not dare to touch it forcefully, so he only touched it gently. He touched the child's arm. Then, his lips twitched. The child that looked so real was actually a jade sculpture. It was hard and cold to the touch. It was not as soft as it looked. Little Nyenma did not give up. He put his little hand closer to the child's nose. A moment later, his little hand fell down. The child was not breathing. It seemed that the jade sculpture was too real. Coupled with the light in the crystal cave, he actually thought that the child was breathing. The strange stone, the strange crystal cave, the strange crystal-like lotus, and the strange jade doll in the lotus, little Nyenma was a little disappointed. He still hoped that the child was real. Just when he was disappointed, there was a slight cracking sound behind him. He turned around and was surprised. Behind him, there was a door that had split open. When he was sucked in, he could not find any way out. Now, the door suddenly appeared. In other words, he could go out. Little Nyenma turned his head to look at the boy in the lotus again and had an idea. Could this child be a mechanism that could lead him out? No, it was not just a mechanism. All the energy in the crystal cave was concentrated in the lotus, and all the energy in the lotus was concentrated in the jade doll. Perhaps this jade doll could also cultivate into a human being. However, it lacked an opportunity. Little Nyenma suddenly remembered that his blood seemed to be very effective. He immediately ran back to the lotus flower and stood on a crystal platform that was as tall as the lotus flower. He looked down at the child from above. Little Nyenma looked like he was 3 or 4 years old, but the baby in front of her was less than a year old. Even if he stood up, he was still half a head shorter than Nyenma. What's more, this little kid had been sitting the whole time. Little Nyenma looked down at the baby and felt that the angle was perfect. The little baby remained motionless, as cold as jade. Little Nyenma pondered for a moment. His face was full of smiles as he spoke to the baby kindly, "Baby, heavenly Tao stone." Ha 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 ha. The heavenly Tao stone's comments were all over the cave's crystal pillars. As for the child, although he did not move at all, not even his eyelashes moved, he seemed to have stiffened for a moment. Fortunately, his movement was very subtle, so little Nyenma did not notice it. Little doll, the fact that you and I can meet today proves that we are indeed fated. Chapter 2165. Little baby, we are destined to meet today. I like you very much. You should be able to become a spirit soon, right? You are just one step away. Just like the person who painted the dragon, as long as the eyes are painted, the dragon will become real and fly for thousands of miles. What I'm going to do today is to give you the finishing touch. I'll give you some essence blood. If you can turn into a human, then you'll be my baby. You have to listen to me. I'm going to take you home, give you new clothes, and play with you. The duty you're wearing is too revealing. When I was your age, I didn't even wear open crotch pants. As he spoke, he forced another drop of blood from his fingertip and reached out to the boy. He wanted to press the blood on the boy's forehead. However, his hand froze in midair. The boy, who had his eyes closed, suddenly opened his eyes. The pair of eyes were as blue as the sea and as deep as the lake. Under the reflection of the crystal, there was a cold gleam flashing. The eyes fell on little Nyenma, but no emotion could be seen. Ah! Little Nyenma was caught off guard and was shocked. He staggered and fell off the crystal platform. The crystal platform was quite high, and little Nyenma fell backward. Although he might not be injured, he was confident that there would be a big bruise on the back of his head. A white light flashed across the ground and wrapped little Nyenma in it. Then, it carried him and flew out. A moment later, little Nyenma stood in the crystal hall with a confused look. The inconspicuous big white stone was still in the same place. It was as if the colorful crystal cave, the lotus, and the boy were just a dream. Was he sent out? Or was it all just a daydream? It should not be a dream, right? How could a dream be so real? Did he violate the taboo inside and was sent out? The little doll was actually alive, and it was so beautiful. The moment he saw her, he felt a sense of closeness. He wanted to get close to her and hug her. No, he had to go in again. No matter what, he had to bring the little baby out and let his mother see the baby that he found. Little Nyenma began to wander around the big white stone. However, he could not even find a crack, let alone a door. Naturally, he did not give up and began to hit the white stone with his hands. Hey, let me in. Let me in. White stone naturally had no reaction. Little Nyenma did not give up. He circled the big stone a few times and even touched the white stone with his little hand again. However, the miracle did not happen again. How could he be willing to give up? Unwilling to give up, he took out the dagger again to threaten her. However, after he repeated all the actions he had done before entering the white stone no longer opened its arms to him and let him in. Little Nianma stopped cursing and sat down on a crystal platform. Did he do something wrong? He just wanted a child to play with him. That way, when his mother was busy, he wouldn't be so bored. He obviously wanted to treat the little kid well and even wanted to give him his childhood clothes to wear, but the little kid obviously didn't appreciate it and actually threw him out like this. Was the little kid a stone fetus? It was just like how he was raised in the red stone, but he had parents. Did this kid have parents? He jumped up again and hit the white stone. Hey, little guy, you are not born with a stone fetus, are you? Do you have parents? I can take you to find your parents. Chapter 2166. Hey, don't ignore me. I really want to play with you. You must be very lonely here by yourself, right? I am quite bored, too. There are no other children to play with me. Can we play together? Can you let me in again? Just once. By the way, you look a little familiar, a little like me. No, you look a little like my father. Everyone, please forgive little Nianma's poor eyesight. In his eyes, his father had always been high and mighty. He was as indifferent as the clouds in the sky and as elegant as the wind in the mountains. Naturally, he would never have thought that his father would look so cute and even wear a doudou. Although Shinjioli had turned smaller in front of him, it was when he was 7 or 8 years old. The appearance of 7 or 8 years old was very different from when he was less than a year old. If not for the comparison, it was almost impossible to tell. Besides, the current Shinjioli did not want his son to recognize him. His temperament was very different from before, so little Nianma could not recognize him. Little Nianma walked around the white stone and tried his best to persuade it. However, his mouth was dry, and the white stone was still too lazy to respond. In the end, he was anxious and seemed to have thought of something. Oh right, my mother is the best at breaking wizardry barriers. She must have a way to open this stone. I will go and find my mother to help me now. At this time, he finally remembered his mother. After a few words, he turned around and wanted to run away. Suddenly, the white stone behind him emitted a faint white light. Little Nianma subconsciously turned around and then widened his eyes. A line of words appeared on the white stone. Do not tell anyone about this. Was this a warning from the little boy? It seemed that the little boy did not want anyone to know his whereabouts. However, little Nianma clenched his little fists and arrogantly raised his eyebrows. He threatened, since you are not willing to let me in and play with me, I will tell someone else. Tell my mother. The white stone said, listen to me and I will give you a surprise in 9 days. Little Nianma's eyes lit up. After all, he was still a child. All children like surprises. Little Nianma asked, what surprise? The white stone answered, you will know when you come. Little Nianma replied, can I visit you on a regular basis? White stone paused for a moment. You can come once every 3 days. White stone reminded him again, remember, don't tell anyone, including your mother. A good boy should keep his promise. Okay. Little Nianma agreed without hesitation. Even children would want to have their own private space. Although the baby in the stone was strange, he was very fond of little Nianma. Therefore, he was willing to share a little secret with him. Moreover, this secret was harmless. White stone added another line of words, go up, your mother and the others are looking for you. If anyone asks, you can say that you used the earth burrowing technique to escape into the crevice underground. This white stone was actually teaching him how to lie. Little Nianma looked at it. A good child will not lie. White rock, white lies are fine. Little Nianma was speechless. Alright, you won't hurt my mother, right? White rock, of course not. Little Nianma was still worried. Swear. White stone, I swear. Little Nianma was finally relieved. He smiled and squinted his eyes. Well, I will come to see you in 3 days. You still have to talk to me. White stone, okay. This little boy was really a man of few words. Not a word more. Chapter 2167. Little Nianma wanted to confirm with him again, but another line of words appeared on the white stone. Your mother is worried. The short words were like a heavy hammer, and little Nianma suddenly realized what was going on. Yes, when Luo Jiuchen caught him, he accidentally triggered the alarm on his body, and it must have alerted his mother. He had not gone out for a long time, and his mother must be worried sick. Little Nianma no longer cared about anything else. He turned around and ran up the path he came from. The path led to the surface. Although the end of the path was sealed, little Nianma could go up by using the underground drilling technique. He ran for a while and occasionally looked back. Suddenly, he was shocked. The crystal path behind him disappeared as he ran, and it directly turned into an ordinary rock layer. If the crystal path disappeared, how could he come back in the future? Little Nianma wanted to run back and ask again, but the path had disappeared, and he could not go back. However, since the child promised to see him once every 3 days, there should be another path waiting for him after 3 days. Finally, he ran to the end of the path. It was the hole that he had fallen into. While he was thinking about using the underground drilling technique to go up, a faint red light suddenly flashed from the side of the hole. A woman came out from the wall of the hole. Mother! Little Nianma saw the woman and rushed directly into the woman's arms. The woman was Ning Xuemo. She was looking for her child crazily. Not only did she search all the big and small palaces in the Mo Palace, but she also did not let go of the underground. She personally used the underground drilling technique to go back and forth in search of the child. Just when she was about to lose all hope, she did not expect to find her son here, safe and sound. The moment Shen Nianma threw himself into her arms, her whole body froze. Then, she raised her arms and hugged the child tightly into her arms. She hugged him tightly as if she was hugging a lost treasure. Shen Nianma almost could not breathe. Mother. Shen Nianma looked up from his mother's arms. The hole was just an ordinary hole, so even if it was dark, Shen Nianma could still see his mother's appearance. She looked like she was in a sorry state. Her hair was disheveled, and her body was dirty here and there. Her face was extremely pale, but her eyes were shockingly bright. Her body trembled slightly, but she suppressed her emotions and asked her son in a hoarse voice, "Where did you go just now?" She had searched this place earlier and had also seen this natural cave. However, she had searched both inside and outside the cave, but she did not see her son. But now, he had suddenly appeared here. Shen Nianma remembered the promise he made with White Stone, so he did not dare to tell the truth. He only answered vaguely. The gist of it was that he had been chased by Luo Jiuchen, and in a moment of desperation, he had used the earth burrowing technique to escape underground. Because he was afraid of being caught, he kept dodging until he accidentally bumped into a rock. He was a little dazed from the collision and was stuck in the crack of the rock until now. There were no loopholes in his words, and Ning Xuemo didn't doubt him. She calmed herself down and checked her son's body to make sure that there was nothing wrong with him. Only then did she heave a sigh of relief. Then, she took her son upstairs. Shinjioli, why don't you want to acknowledge your son? Look, your son misses you very much. Yet, you hardened your heart and refused to acknowledge him. You are so cruel. I always thought that you had not woken up. It turns out that you have been awake for a long time. TSK, TSK. You have been staying in the bud for so long. Chapter 2168. Ha ha ha, my son called me little baby, and he was referring to you as the supreme being. Ha ha ha, what a joke. If this were to spread, I would be the biggest joke in the 6 realms. Ha, he even wants you to be his baby. Shinjioli, you actually used my body to talk to your son. This is a great disrespect to the heavenly Tao. In the crystal cave, the heavenly Tao stone was happily chatting with Shinjioli on the lotus seat. Shinjioli closed his eyes and ignored it. Hey, why don't you say something? Can you not be so boring? Your son is quite talkative, unlike you. He's more like his mother. That little girl's mouth can poison people to death. By the way, that little girl seems to have been waiting for your return. Since you've already woken up, why don't you go and see her? She'll probably go crazy with joy when she sees you. A few days ago, she even came to the Fantion Palace to scold me. Shinjioli, who was sitting on the lotus seat, opened his eyes. His eyes were dark, but no one could tell what he was feeling. This person had never revealed his emotions. The heavenly Tao stone had known him for so many years, so it knew his personality very well. Trying to guess his thoughts from his expression was undoubtedly a fool's dream. The heavenly Tao stone almost wanted to shake its head, but it couldn't help but send another message. I know you can't go out yet, but you can let your son pass a message to her. At the very least, she won't be worried. It didn't want that little girl to scold it behind its back. It felt like it was sneezing. Shinjioli still didn't say anything. He closed his eyes and continued to cultivate. He had to recover as soon as possible, the heavenly Tao stone muttered to itself for a while. Then, it suddenly thought of something. Don't tell me you don't want her to see your current appearance. Are you afraid that she'll laugh at you? Ha, your current appearance is indeed quite shameful. You're even smaller than your son. No wonder your son calls you little baby. The heavenly Tao stone was overjoyed again, and it sent another message. The message it sent was actually in Shinjioli's mind. Shinjioli finally said, "Shut up." Heavenly Tao stone, after spamming here for so long, all she got in return was these 2 stiff words. She was a little disheartened. The Divine Lord's temperament was still the same as it had been for tens of thousands of years. It did not talk to it easily. The crystal cave finally quieted down. After a long while, the heavenly Tao stone couldn't help but write another line of words. I really feel that since you're a baby, you should be more lively to have more vitality, which suits your current appearance. Look at your son, he's alive and well now. Of course, Shinjioli did not respond to its complaints. After a while, the heavenly law stone brushed again. Oh right, why did you ask your son to come and see you once every 3 days? What kind of surprise do you want to give him 9 days later? Will you be able to fully recover by then? This time, Shinjioli finally replied, why don't you make a guess? Heavenly Tao stone, it didn't want to talk to this person anymore. Otherwise, it would be angered to death. Little Nianma was severely injured. The person who injured him was none other than his mother. When he returned to the ground, little Nianma realized that the Mo Palace had been turning the world upside down to look for him. The Mo Palace was already busy, and it was even busier now. Everyone's rhythm was disrupted. The main reason for this was that little Nianma did not listen to them. When he came out, Baizhe, one of the 8 mythological beasts, was with him. Chapter 2169. The main reason was that little Nianma was not obedient. When he came out, Baizé, one of the 8 mythological beasts, was supposed to follow him. However, little Nianma did not want to be followed everywhere, so he made up an excuse to send Baizé away first. That was why he was in danger in the garden. Since the child had been found, everyone was naturally relieved. Ning Xuema strengthened the wizardry barrier above Mo Palace a few more times. Even the 8 mythological beasts followed suit. It would be even more difficult for Luo Jiuchen to sneak in again. As for little Nianma, Ning Xuema almost wanted to give him a beating, but she could not bear to do so. In the end, he was punished by being locked in a small dark room. The 8 mythological beasts personally guarded the room. He was not allowed to come out until he finished copying the 8 scripts. It was the first time that little Nianma saw his mother so angry at him. He felt a little wronged. Although it was called a small dark room, it was actually a study room. There was a table and a stool in the study room, but there was no bed. Even if he did not sleep, it would take him 4 days to copy the 8 scripts. In fact, copying for a few days was not a big deal. The key was that he could not go to the baby in the white stone. With the 8 mythological beasts watching, he could not sneak out at all. He had to accept his fate and copy. He had to finish as soon as possible so that he could find the baby as soon as possible. He copied for a whole day. His wrist was sore, and he was so sleepy that his upper and lower eyelids kept fighting. Children were always sleepy. Now that he was copying something so boring, he could not help but feel sleepy. Unknowingly, he fell asleep on the table. Ning Xuema was busy until midnight. She did not return to her bedroom but went directly to the study room. Baizé, who was waiting for her, reported, "The young master has been very obedient today. He has been writing and writing. He did not rest at all. He has just fallen asleep." This kid probably knew that he was wrong. How could he be so obedient? Ning Xuema was relieved. She asked Baizé to rest while she walked into the room. Her heart ached when she saw her son lying there, sleeping soundly and drooling all over the floor. Although her son had caused a lot of trouble this time, it was not entirely his fault. Such a young child was at the age where he wanted to play. However, because of Luo Jiuchen, she had trapped her son in the Mo Palace and had people following him everywhere he went. Naturally, the child would be annoyed. It was naturally uncomfortable to sleep on his stomach like this. Ning Xuema carefully carried him up, and casually conjured a big, soft bed, and placed his son on it. Even if the kid was asleep, he knew that a big bed was more comfortable than a table. He immediately rolled on the bed and fell asleep again. Ning Xuema looked at the notes he had copied. They were horizontal and vertical, and he had copied them very carefully. However, she also found little Nianma's doodle on the table. Perhaps, little Nianma was still too young to show any talent in drawing. There was a flower on the paper. Was it a flower? Ning Xuema tried to figure it out with uncertainty. A few large semicircles with lots of embellishments represented the overlapping petals. Even the heart of a flower was represented by a big circle. There seemed to be a person standing on the center of the flower. That person also had very simple lines. For example, the head was represented by a circle. The lines drawn on the circle represented the hair. The body was even simpler. For curved lines were drawn on an oval, which should represent the torso and limbs of this person. The 4 lines were twisted together. This should be meditation, right? Or was he practicing some kind of kung fu? Chapter 2170. Ning Xuema looked at the flower and the twisted figure and could not help but laugh. Little Nianma was quite imaginative. Naturally, she would not take the scribbles of a child to heart, so she put it back on the table. A gust of wind blew and flipped the paper over. Ning Xuema then realized that there were words on the back of the paper. The words were written by little Nianma, and they were quite neat. Ning Xuema was baffled by the few words he wrote on the paper. The words on the paper were, Big Lotus, Little Lotus, Baby. Ning Xuema's lips twitched. Big Lotus, Little Lotus. Was it possible that the kid did not draw a flower but a lotus? He even gave it a name. She looked at the little figure again. Was this the baby that he mentioned? Was this brat trying to say that copying this here was as boring as a child sitting on a lotus? Oh, he could actually draw a stream of consciousness. Ning Xuema could not help but laugh. Her eyes fell on a vase on the table. A lotus was blooming in the vase, and its fragrance was overflowing. Ning Xuema stared at the lotus for a moment, and the smile on her lips dimmed. Almighty, our son is really smart. If something really happened to him this time, not only would I be sorry to you, but I would also not be able to live. She closed her eyes slightly. The whole Mo palace was following her lead. She could not be weak. No one knew how tired she was, and no one knew how scared she was when she could not find her son. However, there was no one for her to lean on. In the past, Shinjioli was her strong support. Now, no matter what happened, she had to face it alone. Her hands and feet were still cold until now. Almighty, when will you come back? When will you come back? Her mind flashed with the look on Shinjioli's face when she jumped into the black hole as a sacrifice. He almost swore that if he was reborn, he would never fall in love with her again. He was almost crazy at that time, but she had to do it. Did he hate her so much that he refused to be reborn? Countless speculations were rolling in Ning Xuema's mind. Pa! The pen in her hand was suddenly broken by her unintentional pinch. She didn't seem to feel the bamboo thorns piercing her palm. After a while, she sighed softly, Great God, even if you don't love me anymore, I still hope that you can be reborn. Quickly be reborn, I just want you to live. It doesn't matter if you love me or not. The familiar pain in the depths of her heart rose again. She closed her eyes and waited for the pain to pass. Baby. Baby. Little Nianma, who was sleeping soundly, suddenly turned over and mumbled a few words. Accompany me. I am bored. Ning Xuema was stunned at first, and then her heart felt as if it had been grabbed by someone. She felt that she had overlooked a problem. Her son was already so big, but she had never bought him any decent toys. It was mainly because this brat's usual behavior was too precocious, so no one would think of buying him that kind of thing. For example, rattles, dolls, and some educational toys. When she was pregnant with him, she did buy some, but it was a pity that those things were already destroyed. She thought about it for a moment. Although she could now easily use her magic to create a few dolls, she always felt that the things made with magic were not so honest. She felt guilty for her son, so she wanted to go out and get a few toys for him. She called Xiong Qi and Ting Shi and asked them to stay and look after the child while she went out in the night. Chapter 2171. It was the middle of the night, and it was an eventful season. Most of the shops were closed. However, the underworld was the opposite of the other realms. The later it was, the livelier it was. Ning Xuema went to the market in the underworld this time. The underworld was dark all year round, and it rained from time to time. Therefore, the abnormal weather in the 6 realms did not affect the people in the underworld. Even the strange red rain was like normal rain in the underworld. It was not destructive. Red lanterns were hung high on the streets, and the people were surging. At first glance, one would think that they had arrived at a famous ghost street in the capital. Recently, Ning Xuema's name was very ostentatious. Even her appearance was known throughout the 6 realms. She only wanted to buy a few toys for her son this time. She did not want to attract attention, so she changed her appearance and became a young man in a green robe. She could not change the snowflake-shaped cinnabar mole on her forehead, so she changed it into an ordinary round shape. In this way, she wandered around the streets twice and did not attract anyone's attention. She especially visited toy shops. Probably because the underworld was full of energy all year round, most of the things sold were colorful and colorful. The cloth dolls sold were either flirtatious or strange. They looked a little like the dolls burned for the dead in the human world. It was a little eerie. Although her son was brave, Ning Xuema did not want to buy a ghost doll to accompany him. It was better to find something that looked more sunny. She went to several famous shops in the underworld, but she did not find a suitable one. She was disappointed. Maybe the style of the underworld was like this. It seemed that she was destined to go home empty-handed tonight. She should take some time tomorrow to look at other places. She did not buy a suitable toy for her son, but she accidentally heard a piece of gossip. Recently, the underworld was relatively peaceful compared to the other 5 realms. However, there was a disturbance recently. Children often went missing in the city. It was said that the first ones to go missing were the homeless children on the streets. The underworld was poor, so there were many homeless children. The disappearance of a few homeless children did not attract attention at all. People just felt that there were fewer homeless children on the streets recently. They could not see them all the time, but no one cared. It was not until a few days ago that children from normal families began to go missing that people started to notice. The parents of the children who went missing reported it to the authorities. The authorities also sent out officers to search everywhere, but there was no news. Those children went missing completely, and not even a piece of their clothes could be found. Until now, 8 children from normal families had gone missing, not counting the homeless children. While Ning Xuema was wandering around the main street, she coincidentally bumped into a mother who was crazily looking for her child all over the street. She was calling out her child's nickname, and her voice had almost changed pitch. And Ning Xuema heard the gossip. And the parents of the day, of course, of the children of the day, and the of the day, they would come out to look for their children to eat and of the month of the day. But recently, after the news of the children disappearing frequently spread, the adults no longer dared to let the children out to play. Even if they insisted on going out, the adults would follow them. Just now, the mother who was looking for her child was in the same situation. Her child was used to running around outside. These few days, he was so uncomfortable at home that he insisted on coming out. Chapter 2172. As a mother, she had no choice but to take him out. They just walked around the street and looked at some beautiful jewelry. When she turned around, she found that her 5-year-old son was gone. Ning Xuema frowned slightly. She was also the mother of a child. She could empathize with the pain of losing a child. She hated human traffickers the most in her life. In modern times, she usually killed one whenever she saw one. This time, she just wanted to buy some toys for her son. She didn't expect to encounter such a case. This case was a bit strange. Although human traffickers had existed since ancient times, the underworld was different from other worlds. There was no such concept as men were superior to women. There were 3 kinds of unfilial, and having no children was the worst. So, there were very few people who sold children. Even if there were human traffickers, they mostly liked to sell women. Now, there were only 2 possibilities for a city to suddenly lose so many children in such a short time. First, a group of human traffickers was rampant. They stole the children and sold them to other worlds. Second, someone wanted to use the children to practice some evil martial arts. But the first possibility was not very likely. Because the children of the underworld had a yin body, it was not suitable for them to marry people from other worlds. They had no children after marriage. No one from other worlds was willing to buy the children of the underworld. Even if the children of the underworld were sold, no one would buy them. So, there was only the second possibility left. Ning Xuema's heart suddenly beat wildly. Luo Jiuqin was practicing a kind of evil martial arts now. And his whereabouts had been a mystery recently. She had sent out so many spies, but no one had found him. Since he was hiding now, it meant that his evil martial arts had not really been completed. He was still practicing it. So, was the sudden loss of so many children in the underworld related to him? She was standing there thinking. Then, she heard a tinkling sound from afar. The sound was crisp, sweet, and as beautiful as the sound of nature. She looked in the direction of the voice and saw a child running over with a hop and a skip. Ning Xuema's eyes lit up. The child was holding a doll in his hand. This doll was different from the style of the netherworld. It was carved out of white jade and was about the size of a 3-week-old baby. It had smiling eyes and looked as festive as the Maitreya Buddha. There was a silver bell hanging from the white jade baby's arm and neck. As the baby ran, the silver bell jingled. Her son would definitely like this kind of doll. Ning Xuema remembered her purpose for coming here. Her heart was filled with joy. She immediately stopped the child and asked him where he bought the white jade doll from. The child pointed at the end of the street. There's a newly opened jade shop there. There are many dolls in there, all kinds of them, and they're all very cheap. Ning Xuema was overjoyed and walked in the direction the child was pointing. Xiao Bao, run slower. A woman ran over from the other end of the street and caught up with the child. She reprimanded him unhappily, be careful not to be kidnapped. The child giggled. How could she let her mother hold her hand? She ran forward like a wisp of smoke. No one kidnapped me. I won't be bored if I have this doll with me. The mother and daughter gradually went away. Ning Xuema naturally heard the movement behind her. She couldn't help but shake her head. It seemed that there were still many children who liked dolls, regardless of gender. Her son was not an exception. She finally found the shop. The shop was not big and looked very inconspicuous among the rows of shops around it. Chapter 2173. Ning Xuema walked in and discovered that the interior was filled with white jade dolls. These dolls were of different shapes and sizes, but each one was exquisitely carved and lifelike. Under the illumination of the lantern light, each one of them appeared as round as pearls and smooth as jade, making people want to hug and kiss them. Ning Xuema fell in love with these dolls as soon as she saw them. The boss sitting behind the counter was a middle-aged man with a sallow complexion. He looked listless, but when he saw a customer coming in, he cheered up a little. Ning Xuema looked around the shop. The decoration inside was quite shabby. Other than the wooden shelves that held the white jade dolls, everything else was very inconspicuous. This showed how poor the boss of this shop was. Ning Xuema picked up a jade doll and looked at it carefully. This jade was a little strange. It was not like any jade she had seen before. There was a light pink in the snow-white jade. It felt warm and moist in her hand, like the skin of a baby. It was very comfortable. These jade dolls had silver bells hanging on them, and each of them could make a different sound. When they were shaken, the silver bells would make a crisp tinkling sound, which was breathtaking. Ning Xuema asked about the price. The boss rolled his eyes and looked at Ning Xuema. He stretched out 2 fingers and said, 200 taels for one. Ning Xuema raised her eyebrows. Boss, do you sell by looking at people? Just now, a child bought one here. It was only 20 copper coins. The boss lowered his eyelids again. I sell goods to people who are fated. In my shop, it is only 20 copper coins for a child and 200 taels for an adult. To think that he was really someone who sold goods by looking at people, and even said it so openly. He was a very proud and artistic boss. Ning Xuema played with a doll and asked casually, "These dolls are beautifully carved. 200 taels for one is not expensive. Is this your own craftsmanship?" The boss looked dispirited, but he was too lazy to talk. So what if it is beautiful? Not many people in this place can recognize it. Do you want to buy it or not? If you don't want to buy it, then get out. He actually gave the order to leave. No wonder the shop was so quiet. It turned out that the boss had a weird personality. Since I've chosen them, of course I'll buy them. Ning Xuema chose 2 dolls. I'll take these 2. She placed them on the counter. Help me wrap them up. However, the boss didn't move. Each person can only buy 1. Ning Xuema, what a weird boss. Boss, I have 2 babies at home. At least 1 for each of us, right? Ning Xuema bargained with him. The boss did not give in at all. Adults can only buy 1. You can let the 2 children do it themselves, then I'll give you 1 for free. Ning Xuema. What a weird boss and weird rules. Ning Xuema had no choice but to give up 1 and ask him to pack only 1. Boss, how many dolls have you sold? Ning Xuema asked casually. The boss took the doll and took out a carving knife. He looked up at Ning Xuema and asked, "How old is your child? How many months and days has he been born?" Ning Xuema raised her eyebrows. Boss, why are you asking this? The boss said, "Isn't it more sincere to carve his birthday? Your child will like it more." This reason sounded very reasonable. Ning Xuema casually told him a date. The boss carved the date of birth on the back of the white jade doll with the carving knife. Then, he put the doll into a wooden box and wrapped it up. Chapter 2174. Sure enough, the shopkeeper used a carving knife to carve the birth characters on the back of the white jade doll. Then, he put the doll into a wooden box and wrapped it up properly. This doll has spiritual energy. After I carve the characters on it, the spiritual energy will be even more abundant. It's best for the child to open it and play with it. He handed the box to Ning Xuema. This set of words was very similar to those magical tools that were bought from magical tool shops. Monks and Taoists would say a few words and then they would be considered to have been blessed. Ning Xuema picked up the box, turned around, and walked out. The habits of the underworld were similar to those of the legendary vampires. Whenever the sun rose, it was time for them to rest. The red lanterns on Ghost Street were extinguished one by one. The red lanterns of the jade shop were also extinguished. The door of the jade shop was also closed. Although the sun did not rise, it was still daytime. There were no more bustling people on the street. Occasionally, 1 or 2 people would pass by in a hurry. The whole city seemed to have fallen into a deep sleep. It was very quiet. Ning Xuema actually did not go far. She had been patiently hiding in the dark, observing the shop. In total, 4 children entered the shop. Without exception, they all carried out a white jade doll. Other than the 4 children and the 4 parents accompanying them, no one else entered or left the shop. After the sun rose, the jade shop closed for business. Ning Xuema did not notice anything strange. It seemed that her previous suspicions were unnecessary. Strange. Was this shop really a normal shop? Ning Xuema took the white jade doll out of the box. Under the sunlight, the doll smiled innocently. The white jade was dizzy, and there was nothing strange about it. She had already turned the doll over and over several times, but she did not see anything wrong with it. With her martial arts, even if there was a trace of evil energy on it, she would still be able to sense it. Was she thinking too much? Ning Xuema thought about it. She simply turned invisible and went through the wall to enter the shop. The shop was very quiet. The dolls on the shelves stood there quietly. She went to the back and saw a gloomy wooden coffin. The lid of the coffin was half open, and there was snoring sound coming from inside. Looking inside, he saw the weird shop owner sleeping there. He had obviously fallen asleep. 9 out of 10 people from the underworld liked to sleep in coffins, so Ning Xuema didn't find it strange. She shook her head. It seemed that she was overthinking things. She thought that the dolls in this shop were related to the case of the children in the underworld. She flashed out of the room and looked at the dolls on the shelf. She found another one that she had taken a liking to and put it in her arms without hesitation. Because she had her suspicions, the doll she bought did not have her son's birth characters carved on it, but her own. It was the day when she was reborn in this continent. Since there was nothing strange about this doll, she decided to buy a new one for her son. Of course, she still abided by the rules of business. Before she left, she threw another 200 taels of silver on the counter. Not long after she went out, the boss in the coffin suddenly sat up slowly. He looked in the direction of the outer room and raised the corner of his lips, revealing a rather evil smile. Originally, he was born with an ordinary face. He was the kind that could not be found in a crowd. However, under this smile, there was a kind of romantic and elegant feeling. He stood up from the coffin and stepped out. His body was slightly stiff, but after moving a few times, he returned to normal. He sighed softly. This skin is really uncomfortable to wear. Chapter 2175. As he spoke, he raised his hand and moved the coffin aside. There was another coffin underneath. However, this coffin was yellow in color, which was the same color as the ground. It was buried underground. If he didn't move the coffin above, he wouldn't be able to find the coffin below. The shop owner looked down at the person sleeping in the coffin and let out a sigh of relief. Suddenly, his body withered and fell to the ground. The person in the coffin slowly opened her eyes and stood up gracefully. She stretched her arms and legs and her long eyelashes fluttered. My own body is still more comfortable. His features were elegant, and his purple robes were like the first rays of sunlight. Astonishingly, he was the person Ning Xuema couldn't find, Luo Jiuqin. He stepped out of the coffin and pressed the coffin above it back down. Then, he put the shop owner's body back into the coffin. He did this skillfully. Apparently, it wasn't his first time doing this. He walked out of the shop and looked at the dolls on the shelf. He smiled silently. He picked up the 200 taels of silver on the table and sniffed it. It was as if he was smelling something he liked. After a long time, he opened his eyes and kissed the silver. Little Xuema, I really like you. But you always want to kill me. It's so sad when I think about it. Although Ning Xuema had used a technique to change her appearance, she could only fool an average person. If she wanted to fool an extremely important person like him, it would be very difficult. Little Xuema, you will be mine sooner or later. Since you're a devil, then I'll accompany you in becoming a devil. We should be a real couple. There will be a time when we meet normally, but now is not the time. He muttered softly. He smiled again and used a spell to draw an array formation on the ground. He sat in the middle of the array formation and made a hand seal to chant an incantation. After a long time, there was a soft knock on the door. He stood up with a smile and opened the door. Outside the door, a 6 or 7-year-old boy was standing, looking at him with a blank expression. Good boy, come in. His voice was gentle. He held the boy's little hand and walked into the shop. The door of the shop closed automatically, and a gust of wind blew along the path the child had taken, leaving no trace behind. Even the hounds with the best sense of smell would not be able to find this place based on the scent of a child. A moment later, a strange groan came from the shop, as if the owner was in extreme pain but couldn't make a sound because his throat was cut. A moment later, the shop returned to normal as if nothing had happened. Inside the shop, a faint black smoke came out from the crack of the door and then disappeared. When Ning Xuemo returned to Mo Palace, the sky was already bright. She first went to check on the child and found that the little fellow had already woken up. Unexpectedly, he did not wait for anyone to urge him and was earnestly copying the book. It was unusually worry-free. She pinched the white jade doll in her arms. She originally wanted to give it to her son, but after thinking about it, she decided against it. I'll give it to him 2 days later as a reward for his hard work in copying books. She stood outside the window and watched for a while. Bai Zhe happily reported to her, "Little master woke up in the middle of the night to copy books. He is so hard-working." Ning Xuemo looked at her son's thin arms and legs. He was too thin before, and until now, he still hadn't recovered. There was not much meat on his body. She thought for a while and turned to the kitchen. Chapter 2176. While little Nianma was busy copying, he suddenly smelled the fragrance of food. He looked up and saw his mother walking in with a tray. There was a bowl of fragrant porridge and a few delicious dishes on the tray. As he was punished, he was still a little angry. He pursed his lips and continued to write without looking up. Was the little guy angry with her? Ning Xuemo was a little amused. Her son had always been very considerate, and this was the first time he was angry with her. Ning Xuemo wanted to hold the little guy in her arms and coax him, but a loving mother would only spoil her son. Since he was being punished, she did not want to coax him. Therefore, she put the food on the table and said calmly, "Eat first. You can write after you are full. I am not hungry." Little Nianma's voice was stiff, and he still did not look up. Oh, the little guy was still stubborn with her. Ning Xuemo looked at the side of his face and was in a trance. Her son looked a little like his father when he was young. Ning Xuemo thought of the 9 Supremes in the Tianshu mountain. The past was like smoke, and it felt like a lifetime ago. The familiar tingling in her heart rose again, and her eyes were wet. She shook her head to stop herself from thinking about it. She wanted to talk to her son, but now the 6 realms were in an eventful period. There were too many things to be done. She had been sleeping in the middle of the night for the past few days, and she was already tired. In addition, she had been running around in the underworld for the whole night. At this moment, she felt even more tired and wanted to go back for a little rest. She did not say anything but turned and walked out. Little Nianma was stunned. He thought that his mother would coax him when he was angry. He did not expect that she would just turn and leave. He pouted and wondered if his mother did not love him anymore. He looked at the food on the table and frowned. Because of the grievance in his heart, he was not hungry. Little Nianma was quite picky when it came to food. If it was not to his taste, he would rather not eat it. The dishes on the table were not to his taste. Only the porridge smelled better, but it was not necessary to eat it. He thought about it and decided not to eat it. He called for Bai Zhe, who was outside, and asked him to take the food away, saying that it was inconvenient for the smell of books to be mixed with the smell of rice. Bai Zhe frowned. "Young master, the Devil Lord personally, well, I know that she sent it here personally, but I have no appetite." Little Nianma argued and then put the tray in Bai Zhe's hand. "Have you not eaten yet? I'll give it to you." Bai Zhe, the little fellow was very determined. Bai Zai didn't want to waste the food, so he had to take the food out. He ate a few mouthfuls and vaguely felt that something was wrong. The dishes were fine, but the porridge seemed to have a sweet and fishy smell. He didn't think too much about it and finished the porridge and dishes. Among the 8 great divine beasts, the Ting snake was a famous chef. These days, the young master and the demon lord's meals were all cooked by him. When Soaring Snake came to change shifts, Bai Zai half teased it, "Your cooking skills seem to have deteriorated." The porridge that the Devil Lord sent over just now reeked of blood, and the dishes tasted a little salty. The Ting snake shushed him. "I didn't cook the food, the Devil Lord cooked it herself." She said that her son was too thin, so she wanted to add some nutrition to him. She seemed to have used some of her own blood. You don't know that the Devil Lord is omnipotent, but when it comes to cooking, she has no talent. It took her more than 2 hours to make these dishes and porridge. She even had to redo them once to make them like this, but they still taste bloody and a little salty. Chapter 2177. Bai Zai was speechless. He knew that the Devil Lord's flesh had always been the best tonic, but he did not expect that. What should he do now that the porridge had gone into his stomach? The flying serpent suddenly thought of something. "Hey, how did you know that the porridge had the smell of blood? Did the food taste salty? Did you lick the plate?" Bai Zai glared at him. "You are the one who licked the plate. You are the one who licked the plate." The flying serpent was speechless. Bai Zai ignored the flying serpent's confused face and only said, "Go and prepare another serving. The young master will be hungry later." The little guy was still growing, so it was better for him to eat more nutritious food. The flying serpent was there to take over his shift. He looked at Bai Zai and said, "Aren't you tired after staying up all night? I am here to replace you." Bai Zai said with a rough voice, "Go and prepare the food. I don't need you to replace me. Staying up all night is nothing. Our Devil Lord stayed up even longer. She has been very busy these days, and she did not sleep at all last night." He turned around and saw little Nianma standing at the door, looking at them with his eyes wide open. "Did Mother cook the food herself?" The flying serpent looked at Bai Zai and then at little Nianma. He nodded carefully and said, "Yes." "Did she not sleep last night? Was it a meeting?" Little Nianma continued to ask. Bai Zai shook his head. "I am not sure. The Devil Lord wanted to stay here last night to guard you, but she suddenly remembered something and came out again. She asked me to guard you while she went out of the palace. She only came back this morning and came here directly." "Hey, young master, where are you going?" Little Nianma had already run away. "I am going to see my mother." Little Nianma ran to the Devil Lord's bedroom and saw Ning Xuema and General Manager Heimu walking out together. Something must have happened outside. Both head steward Heimu and his mother had grave expressions on their faces. His mother was probably very tired. Her eyes were bloodshot. Both of them were in a hurry, so they did not see little Nianma hiding in the bushes. Soon, they were far away. Little Nianma, who was behind them, only heard a few words. Was there anything unusual when the Celestial Emperor went missing? Didn't he have 8 strong guards around him? That's what's strange. The Celestial Arch disappeared from his own palace, and I didn't hear any signs of him struggling. The experts around him thought that he had finally fallen asleep. I'm afraid it's Luo Jiuchen again. Quickly send someone to the celestial world to investigate. Is there any news from Yi Tianli? No, the enemy is in the dark, while I am in the light. If Luo Jiuchen wants to hide, it won't be easy to find him. Ning Xuema seemed to think of something. By the way, Heimu, send someone to the underworld today to investigate. Recently, the underworld has been losing children frequently. Perhaps it has something to do with Luo Jiuchen's evil arts. The two of them discussed as they left. Little Nianma came out from the bushes and pursed his lips. He was afraid that mother would only sleep for a short while before she woke up to deal with so many things. She would be so busy that her feet wouldn't touch the ground. He still failed to live up to his mother's good intentions. Little Nianma felt a little guilty. Without hesitation, he ran back to the study room to copy the book. At night, Ning Xuema finished dealing with the matters at hand. It was already midnight. First, she went to see her son. When she saw that he had already gone to bed, she was relieved. She did not want to disturb her son's sleep, so she went back to her own bedroom. She was so tired that she did not even have the energy to cast a cleaning spell. She climbed onto the bed and fell asleep. Perhaps it was because she had been staying up late recently, so she was particularly easy to get tired. Chapter 2178. Perhaps it was because she had been staying up late recently, but she was particularly tired. Especially today, when she almost fell asleep during the meeting in the hall. Her mind was blank. She was sleeping so soundly that she did not notice the two white jade dolls that she put in the storage space slowly slid out. Right next to her pillow, one of them was glowing faintly, as if the doll was smiling. As for the other doll, it was the same as usual. There was nothing unusual about it. The next day, when Ning Xuema woke up, she only felt that her head was buzzing. She was still tired after a good night's sleep. She looked in the mirror and saw the dark circles under her eyes. She could not help but rub her eyebrows. She was indeed too tired these days. However, there was no other way. Luo Jiuchen was obviously practicing evil magic. She had to find him before he finished practicing and seal him. Yes, she could only seal him. Without the poison of heavenly water, she could not kill him at all. However, she still lacked 2 pills to make the poison of heavenly water. These 2 pills were extremely difficult to find. She secretly sent people to ask all the well-known pharmacists in the 6 worlds, but they all said that they had never heard of it. It seemed that these 2 pills were not in the Celestial Devil Continent. Unfortunately, the Celestial Devil Continent was a dead land. People could only enter but not leave. The people in the Celestial Devil Continent could not leave at all. Therefore, she did not think about the poison of heavenly water for the time being. Fortunately, she knew how to activate the Bell of Heaven Dao. When the time came, she would find a way to seal Luo Jiuchen. She had a vague feeling in her heart. If she did not get rid of Luo Jiuchen soon, she was afraid that the 6 worlds would be in a bloodbath again. Perhaps it would be worse than the Purple Evil Disaster 50,000 years ago. The Purple Evil Disaster 50,000 years ago was the result of Miao Fan practicing the evil magic taught by Luo Jiuchen. Miao Fan, who was originally an ordinary person, became so powerful after using the evil magic. If Luo Jiuchen directly practiced it by himself, Ning Xuema almost did not dare to think about the consequences. Perhaps she should take the initiative. However, how could she make Luo Jiuchen show up? This was a very troublesome problem. Ning Xuema rubbed her eyebrows again. After thinking about it, she strode out. Not long after she went out, little Nianma ran in with a big red fruit in his hand. He picked it in the garden and wanted to give it to his mother as a gift. Because of this, he deliberately got up early, but he didn't expect that he would still be a step late. His mother had gone out again. He was a little disappointed. He walked around the palace and accidentally found 2 white jade dolls lying on the inside of his mother's quilt. The 2 dolls were all smiles, and they looked very adorable. Shen Nianma fell in love with her at first sight. He picked up one of the dolls and found a few words on its back. Although it was written in an ancient language, little Nyenma's cultural background was not bad, so he could recognize it very quickly. This seemed to be the date of his mother's rebirth. Shin Nyenma looked at the doll with the word engraved on it and then looked at the one without the word engraved on it. Both dolls were equally adorable. However, Shin Nyenma did not particularly like it. After all, he was a boy. In his eyes, dolls were only for girls. He preferred things like knives, swords, and spells. If he had to choose a toy, he would be more interested in a kite. As for dolls, little Nyenma carefully looked at the two dolls side by side on the bed. Both dolls were very beautiful. They were wearing belly bands, one red and the other blue. There were silver bells on their wrists and ankles. Chapter 2179. Little Nyenma played with the silver bell on one of the dolls. Although the two dolls were beautiful, they were not as beautiful as the doll in the white dudu that he saw in the white stone. Why did his mother put two dolls on the bed? Did his mother like to play with dolls? Well, his mother was also a girl. Perhaps she really liked to play with dolls. Little Nyenma pondered seriously. He was worried about his mother's birthday present in a few days. Now that he saw the dolls, he seemed to have found a direction. He fiddled with the two dolls. The red dudu doll was engraved with words, but the blue dudu doll was not. He suddenly had an idea. Were the two dolls a pair? Did the red dudu doll represent his mother? Did the blue dudu doll represent his father? The more he looked at it, the more he felt that it was the case. Mother also misses his Lord Father, right? She just did not show it. Little Nyenma suddenly felt a little sour in his nose. He raised his hand to rub his nose and put the two dolls back into the quilt. Then, he ran out. He also wanted to give his mother two dolls, which were 100 times more beautiful than these two dolls. After he ran out, Baizé was standing outside dutifully. He had not left little Nyenma's side for the past few days. He only waited patiently outside when the little guy came to the bedroom to look for his mother. The great devil's bedroom had a very strong wizardry barrier. Entering the bedroom was like entering a safe, it was very safe. Therefore, Baizé was very relieved. After the two of them left, the quilt on the bed shook slightly. The red dudu doll slowly poked its head out. It did not seem to have changed, but its eyes seemed to be shining. Swoosh! A red light came out of nowhere and hit the red dudu doll. The red dudu doll trembled and stopped moving. The light in its eyes gradually disappeared. It seemed that nothing had happened. Another day had passed. In the middle of the night, Ning Xuemo returned to the bedroom. When she opened the quilt, she saw the two dolls lying side by side. She was stunned for a moment and frowned. She clearly remembered that she had put these two dolls in her storage space. How did they come out on their own? Could it be? Her fingers landed on the two dolls, and she used her telekinesis to scan them, but she didn't find anything. She stared at the two dolls in a daze for a moment. She had already sent several high-level spies to the underworld to investigate the missing children. Of course, she had also investigated the shop that sold the dolls. The underworld was still losing its children, and the circumstances were all strange. Some children were clearly playing at home, but in the blink of an eye, they disappeared into thin air. Some children would walk with their parents on the streets. As they walked, they would suddenly stumble, fall, and disappear. It was impossible to guard against such a method of losing a child. The people of the underworld were now in a state of panic. Everyone kept a close eye on their children, but they still couldn't prevent their children from going missing. As for the shop that sold dolls, there was nothing out of the ordinary. Just like the other shops, the owner opened at night and closed at dawn. Moreover, the boss was a loner and didn't like to go shopping. One of the spies had been there for a whole day, but he didn't see anything wrong with the boss. More importantly, the children who bought the dolls did not go missing. All of them were alive and kicking. The ones who were missing were the other children. Chapter 2180. Based on all the signs, the Jade doll shop had nothing to do with the missing children. Ning Xuemo pinched the bedboard and squinted her eyes. Was she being paranoid? However, her keen sixth sense told her that there was something wrong with the shop. Now that she saw the two white jade dolls, Ning Xuemo felt even more suspicious. Perhaps she should go there again to check it out. She got on the bed and pushed the two dolls to the corner of the bed. Then, she fell into a deep sleep. A dreamless night passed. When Ning Xuemo woke up, it was already morning. She leisurely got up and leisurely folded her quilt. Then, she saw that the two dolls that she had pushed to the side of her bed were now lying on the side of the bed, less than a foot away from her pillow. She curled her lips slightly and casually grabbed the two dolls and threw them into her storage space. Little Nianma finally completed the task after copying the books for 4 days. He felt that he was almost cross-eyed. Everywhere he looked, there were only words. However, at least he completed the task with quality and quantity. Immediately, little Nianma took his achievement to his mother to ask for praise. Ning Xuemo seemed to finally have some free time today. She actually had time to accompany her son for lunch. She even prepared a big table of dishes as a reward. Little Nianma took a look at the dishes. They were all his favorite dishes, and they smelled great. However, these dishes were obviously made by the flying snake. It was not like the other day when his mother personally cooked for him. Unfortunately, those dishes were taken advantage of by Bai Zhe. He was afraid that his mother would not cook for him in the future. Little Nianma rubbed his nose and could not help but look up and ask, "Mother, I think the porridge and dishes that you sent to me a few days ago were quite delicious." Ning Xuemo picked up a dish for him and said calmly, "You didn't eat the porridge and dishes that day and gave them to Bai Zhe, right? How do you know if they are delicious?" Little Nianma was speechless. He did not expect his mother to know about this. He blushed and lowered his head. Nianma didn't know. "I didn't know that it was made by my mother." If he had known in advance, he would have stuffed it into his stomach. After all, making his mother cook was more difficult than making the sky rain red. Ning Xuemo raised her hand and rubbed her son's head. She knew how good she was at cooking, and whether it was the color or the aroma, it was not as good as Tingxi's cooking. Since her son was growing, she naturally wanted to give him the best and most delicious food. However, since her son wanted to eat her cooking, she would practice her cooking skills in the future and cook a few more meals for her son. "Mother will make more for you in the future. Eat these first. Look at how skinny you are." Ning Xuemo picked up a big pork shoulder and gave it to him. Little Nianma began to eat happily. His mother was too busy, so they rarely had the chance to eat together. Little Nianma cherished this opportunity very much. After dinner, little Nianma had just cleaned his hands when his mother conjured a big doll out of thin air. She handed it to him and said, "Come, Nianma. You have done well this time. Mother will reward you." Little Nianma was speechless. It was a super cute doll with big eyes and a small mouth. It was chubby and soft to hold in one's arms. Why did his mother suddenly give him this? Little Nianma looked at the big doll that was almost as tall as him and was a little puzzled. Chapter 2181. He blinked his eyes and looked at his mother with a puzzled expression. Was the child so happy that he became silly? Ning Xuema stuffed the doll into his arms and said, "Don't you like dolls? You can hug it to sleep when you are bored." Little Nianma was even more confused. He scratched his head and said, I didn't say that I like dolls. You didn't say it, but you said it in your dream." Ning Xuema could not help but laugh. She did not want to expose her son's lie. "Alright, Nianma, you can play with this first. I will buy you other dolls in the future." Since it was a gift from his mother, little Nianma naturally accepted it. However, he was still a little puzzled. If his mother thought that he liked dolls, why didn't she give him the 2 white jade dolls? The 2 dolls were indeed his mother's private collection, right? His mother really liked to play with these dolls. Little Nianma was proud of his conclusion. "Nianma, I have to go out tonight and will only be back in about 3 or 4 days. You have to be obedient in Immerse Palace this time. Don't go out of the palace, don't." Ning Xuema said 4 or 5 times in a row. Obviously, she was worried about her son. Every time she wanted to go out, she would remind him a few times. Little Nianma's ears were almost calloused from hearing it, so he simply agreed. He would not go out of the palace, nor would he run around, but he had to see the doll in the white stone. When it was almost evening, little Nianma made up an excuse and said that he wanted to play in the garden for a while. He asked Bai Zai to wait for him outside the garden. He wanted to have fun in the garden. Bai Zai also felt that the little master had been copying books for the past few days and was really bored. It was good to let him have some fun in the garden. Since Luo Jiuqun came once, Immerse Palace had strengthened its security. The wizardry barrier around the palace was like an iron wall. Even Luo Jiuqun could not easily enter again. Of course, to be safe, Bai Zai carefully walked around the garden in advance to make sure that there was no abnormality. Only then did he feel assured to let the little master be alone in the garden. At this moment, little Nianma was standing near the entrance of the cave. He was still very nervous. The passage had been automatically sealed. Could he still go in this time? Just as he was about to squat down and pat the ground cracked open the moment he stood up. Once again, little Nianma went deep into the ground. Looking at the familiar crystal passage, little Nianma smiled and ran all the way forward. Soon, he arrived at the crystal hole. "You're late." A few words appeared on the large white rock, with a hint of reproach. Little Nianma was out of breath. "I was punished. I only got my freedom today." "Why were you punished?" Little Nianma did not know why, but he trusted the stone from the bottom of his heart. Therefore, he told him the reason. Of course, he also briefly explained the situation outside. The stone was silent for a moment before it said, "You should be punished." Little Nianma remained silent. He thought that he would be comforted by white stone. He didn't expect to receive such a sentence. However, little Nianma had always been optimistic. Although his heart was hurt, he was still in high spirits. "By the way, Big Lien, can you let me in to see you again? Have you grown taller these days?" White stone, inside the white stone, the heavenly law stone was crazy. "Ha ha ha, Big Lien, it seems that your son has recognized this name." The boy on the lotus seat was slightly taller than before. Chapter 2182. The boy on the lotus seat was slightly taller than before. Although he still looked like a baby, the aura between his eyebrows was very strong. He looked up and glanced at the place where the heavenly law stone was spamming. "Aren't you afraid that I will destroy your crystal?" The heavenly law stone was speechless. It did not dare to continue spamming. Shinjioli's eyes fell on a crystal ball. The crystal ball clearly reflected the figure of little Nianma. He did not see him for 4 days, and he seemed to be a little fatter than before. He no longer looked like a little monkey. His two big eyes were shining, and he looked very much like his mother. He raised his hand and pointed his finger at the empty space. Then, a line of words appeared on the white stone that Shin Nianma saw. "Call me Lord Lien." When he heard his son call him Lord Lien, he wanted to slap him away. Shin Nianma pouted his little mouth. "Lord Lien. How old are you to call me Lord? Little kid, you can't be too anxious. If you want to call me Lord, it should be me who calls you Lord first." Shinjioli was speechless. The heavenly law stone said, "Ha. Ha." Shinjioli certainly did not want to argue with this kid about these insignificant issues. He was not concerned about this at the moment. The location of the heavenly law stone was not as shallow as little Nianmo thought. The crystal hall was at least a few thousand feet above the ground. Therefore, even if someone used the earth escape technique to check the underground of the Mo Palace, no one would be able to find this place. The reason why little Nianmo could come was that the heavenly law stone did not go easy on him. The heavenly law stone was well hidden, but because it was hiding its tracks, it also restrained its telekinesis and spiritual power. In this place, the heavenly law stone could only sense the aura on the ground of the Mo Palace. It could not sense anything from other places. Therefore, he did not know what was going on above. Ning Shuama had not been in the garden for a long time. He had not even sensed her presence for 4 to 5 days. He thought about it and used the appearance of the heavenly law stone to talk to his son. Of course, he did not speak. The so-called conversation was only the lines of words that appeared on the heavenly law stone. Shinjioli did not talk much. Fortunately, little Nianmo was a talkative person. He answered almost every question that was asked, so Shinjioli understood a lot of things. After all, little Nianmo was still too young. He was not very clear about the situation outside, so he could only tell them what he knew. However, Shinjioli managed to capture a lot of useful information from his scattered words. For example, the red rain outside, the disappearance of the immortal generals, the disappearance of the celestial arch, and Ning Shuama's tiredness. The heavenly Tao stone had a rough idea of what was going on. So Luo Jiuqin has really gone mad. Shinjioli didn't say anything. That person's heart wasn't in the right place. It was only a matter of time before he turned into a demon. Once he turned into a demon, there would be a fatal flaw in his body. He would no longer have an immortal body. Little Nianmo continued to ask, "By the way, do you have parents? Don't tell me you're this rock that has become a spirit." "No, it's not." White Stone's words were very concise. "Sigh, then you are such a poor baby. You probably haven't experienced the feeling of love from your parents." Little Nianmo immediately sympathized with him. Shinjioli was speechless. Indeed, he had never experienced the feeling of love from his parents. At first, he did not think much of it. Now, he suddenly felt that it was indeed a little lacking. The heavenly Tao stone seemed to have sensed something. It eagerly wrote a line of words. "In fact, you don't have to feel regretful. I can love you in the future." Suddenly, it could not write the rest of the words. There was a small crack on its crystal screen. Chapter 2183. The heavenly law stone was speechless. It finally shut its mouth. In fact, it feels good to have parents who love you. You can always act like a spoiled child in front of them. Everything that they do is for your own good. Little Nianmo continued to talk about the benefits of having parents. Finally, he concluded, "A child with a mother is a treasure. A child without a mother is like a weed." Shinjioli lifted his sleeve and wrote a line of words on the white stone. "Does your mother love you very much?" "Of course. It hurts so much. Yesterday, she personally cooked delicious food for me. She even used her own blood to make porridge. Unfortunately. Little Nyenma sighed at the end of his sentence. Unfortunately what? Unfortunately, I didn't get to eat the delicious food. I was angry with her at that time. I didn't know that it was her cooking, so I deliberately didn't eat it. After she left, I gave the food to Baizé. Shinjioli was speechless. His eyes flashed with a touch of sharpness. It had been a long time since he tasted the food that she cooked. Baizé, that bastard, was lucky. Baizé, who was outside the garden, suddenly shuddered. It looked around suspiciously. Who was scolding it? In the crystal hall, little Nyenma sat on a piece of crystal and negotiated with the white stone. By the way, can you give me 2 of the best quality crystals? The white stone asked, aren't you surrounded by crystals? Little Nyenma shook his head. The crystals outside are not pure, and they are not the best quality. What I need this time is the best quality crystal. It is the best thing for my mother. Shinjioli asked, you want to give the crystal to your mother? The girl indeed liked shiny things and liked to collect jewelry. It turned out that even her son knew about this habit. Little Nyenma nodded. Yes, it will be my mother's birthday in a few years. I want to give her a crystal doll. She will like it very much. This was the main purpose of little Nyenma's visit. Shinjioli asked, a crystal doll? Why a doll? He thought that little Nyenma wanted to give his mother a crystal ball or a crystal hair accessory. He did not expect it to be a doll. My mother is a girl. She likes dolls very much. Little Nyenma said. Shinjioli. How did you know? Why didn't he know that she had this hobby? My mother has a pair of white jade dolls, they are both very beautiful. One of them was a boy, and the other was a girl. They were wearing dudu, and they looked very cute. Little Nyenma shared his discovery. Shinjioli, little Nyenma took a look at the white stone. Oh, by the way, not only are the baby's eyes and eyebrows beautiful, but the bellyband is also beautiful. One red bellyband, and the other blue bellyband. They look better than the bellyband you are wearing. Shinjioli, little Nyenma was excited. I guess that the doll must have a special meaning. The girl probably represents my mother, and the boy represents my father. She probably collected this pair of things because she missed my father. Shinjioli was speechless. He looked down at the silver dudu he was wearing. There was no trace of blue on it. The heavenly Tao stone carefully wrote a line of words, you're a white dudu. It seems like that boy doesn't represent you, shut up. Shinjioli did not look too good. Recently, the heavenly Tao stone seemed to be eager to see him make a fool of himself. From time to time, it would try to figure out his thoughts. The heavenly Tao stone was satisfied and did not speak anymore. It felt that it had guessed the truth, which was why this person was so angry. Chapter 2184. Outside, little Nyenma could not stop talking. The 2 dolls even have silver bells on them. They jingle when you shake them. They are very pleasant to the ears. My mother loves them so much that she puts them on the bed. However, Shinjioli's expression turned serious. Nyenma, can you tell me the features of the baby? Little Nyenma was surprised. How do you know that my name is Nyenma? Shinjioli said, good boy, tell me the details. Little Nyenma looked at the word good boy that flashed on the white stone and was a little speechless. He felt a little awkward to be called good boy by a little guy who was younger than him. Hey, I am older than you. You can't say good boy to me. I should be the one saying that to you. Little Nyenma was serious. The heavenly law stone almost wanted to burst into laughter again, but it held back. It was rare to see the Divine Lord being annoyed by his son. It was also a strange scene. It wanted to see how Shinjioli would refute his son. It waited with great interest. Unexpectedly, Shinjioli did not care about this at all. He simply said to little Nyenma, "Get to the point." Little Nyenma was speechless. Why did he feel that the person who talked to him in the stone was not the dolls but his father? He did not want to listen to the stone, but he did not know why he felt an instinctive sense of closeness to the dolls in the stone. Moreover, the stone was talking to him in such a serious manner. Perhaps there was something strange. Therefore, little Nyenma described the appearance of the two dolls in detail. He had a good memory and eloquence, so he described them very clearly. Shinjioli looked more serious. After a moment of silence, he asked, "What time is it now outside?" Little Nyenma estimated. "It should be around 5 o'clock. Shinjioli immediately said, "The two dolls are a little strange. Bring them to me, and I will help you take a look." Little Nyenma was shocked, but he was still a little doubtful. "What is strange?" Shinjioli did not want to scare the child, so he did not explain. "Bring them to me, and I will know." Little Nyenma was also worried that the two babies would harm his mother, so he immediately turned and ran away. He went out of the back garden and ran into Baizé, who was anxiously looking for him in the garden. When he saw him running out, Baizé face-bombed. "Little ancestor, what did you do in there? This subordinate called you several times, but you didn't respond." Little Nyenma answered vaguely, "I am playing inside." "By the way, where's my mother?" Baizé sighed. "I was just about to tell you this. The Devil Master has already left. He's worried about you, so he sent a voice transmission to me." Before he could finish his sentence, little Nyenma had already run away with his two short legs. "I'm going to Mother's chamber to have a look." The little guy was really impatient. Baizé shook his head. He was still worried, so he followed them. "Hey, where are they?" Little Nyenma had almost turned the entire palace upside down, but he still could not find the two dolls. He had clearly seen them on the bed. Could it be that his mother had put away those two dolls? He rummaged through the cabinets for a long time, but he still couldn't find the two dolls. Did his mother bring them with her? He thought for a moment and ran out again. He grabbed Baizé's sleeve and asked, "Where is my mother?" Baizé did not understand why he was so anxious. "The Devil Master has gone to the underworld. It is a little strange there. The Devil Master has gone to check it out. This matter should not be disclosed to the public. Young Master, you should not tell anyone either." Chapter 2185. Baizé did not understand why he was in such a hurry. The Devil Master has gone to the underworld. There is something strange there. The Devil Master should go and check it out. It is not appropriate to tell anyone about this. Young Master, you can't tell anyone. He took the opportunity to remind him. Before he could finish his sentence, the little guy had already run far away. Baizé could only see the back of his head. "Young Master, where are you going?" Baizé had no choice but to chase after him. "Baizé, I am going to the garden to play for a while. Don't disturb me." Little Nyenma ran to the garden and closed the door behind him. Baizé was speechless. What was wrong with the little guy today? He was very strange. However, he knew that children often did things on impulse. There was not much reasoning to be done. As long as the little guy stayed in Imo Palace, he would be relieved. If he wanted to play, he could play for a while. "My mother probably took the dolls away. I have searched the palace for a long time, but I could not find them. Little Nyenma ran back to the crystal hall and said while panting. In the crystal cave, Shinjuli's heart sank. Where did your mother go? Is she not in Mo Palace? Little Nyenma shook his head. When he was about to tell the truth, he suddenly remembered Baize's words. Although the white stone saved his life, its origin was still unknown. What his mother did was a secret, so he could not simply say it. He pursed his lips and looked at the white stone. She has been very busy recently. She often goes out. I don't know where she has gone. Shinjuli looked at his son's little face in the crystal ball in the crystal cave. After all, the little guy was too young to be good at lying. After a few words, his little face was a little red. He pondered for a moment. It was not easy to gain the child's trust in a short time without exposing his identity. As for the two dolls, he was indeed worried. What is so strange about the two dolls? My mother's kung fu is quite good. If there is something strange, she should be able to detect it. Little Nyenma still wanted to know more. However, when he said that, he saw a whirlpool appear on the white stone. Then, he was pulled into the crystal cave by a mysterious force. Little Nyenma was speechless. He stood up straight and rubbed his eyes. He looked at the doll sitting on the lotus and said, "You have grown again." It had only been 4 days since they last saw each other, but the child had grown up quite a bit. When she saw him 4 days ago, he looked less than a year old. Now, he looked like he was 2 or 3 years old. He was almost the same age as little Nyenma. This time, the baby didn't wear a dudu. Instead, he wore a small silver robe and sat there like a Buddha statue. Shinjuli really didn't want to face his son in this state unless he had no other choice. If his son recognized him, he would lose all his dignity. Which father would be willing to let his son see him wearing a dudu? He had already made up his mind. Once he recovered, the first thing he would do was to erase his son's memories of this period. He beckoned to his son. "Come here." Although his voice was dignified, it was still a tender child's voice. Little Nyenma looked at him cautiously. "What are you doing? Why was this brat suddenly so cautious?" Shinjuli looked at him and said, "Nyenma, if I wanted to harm you, I could just lock you up here. You don't have to be so cautious." Little Nyenma thought about it and agreed with what he said. However, Chapter 2186. He always felt that he should not trust someone so easily. His mother always said that people's hearts were sinister. Some people seemed to have a good temper, but they often plotted against others behind their backs. However, the little boy in front of him should not be like that, right? Little Nyenma had experienced so many things since he was young, so he did not trust people easily. However, since he saw this little boy, he inexplicably wanted to trust him and even wanted to be close to him. Shinjuli looked at his big black eyes and slowly said, "Nyenma, I will never hurt you and your mother. If I am not wrong, the two dolls should be witchcraft dolls. If you carry them with you, your mind will be unknowingly controlled. It will be very dangerous for your mother to go out alone." There was an inexplicable power in his voice. Little Nyenma widened his eyes. "But my mother should know about the witchcraft dolls." Even he had heard of it, so it was impossible that his mother did not know about it. This voodoo doll is different from normal voodoo dolls. Normal voodoo dolls carry evil aura, but this voodoo doll can remove the evil aura. If it is not activated, no one will notice anything unusual, Shinjuli explained to his son. He reached out to little Nyenma. "Come and sit next to me. I will tell you in detail." Little Nyenma was not afraid that he would play tricks. He climbed onto the lotus seat and sat next to Shinjuli. The lotus seat looked soft and comfortable, but when he sat down, he felt as if he was nesting on a piece of ice. It made little Nienmo shiver. Shinjioli seemed to have realized that his son could not stand the cold. He raised his hand and pulled a lotus petal to turn it into a futon. Sit on this. Little Nienmo pulled the futon under his buttocks. He was still anxious about what happened just now. Is the doll really so powerful? Then, won't my mother be very dangerous? Shinjioli said, so, Nienmo, you have to tell me where your mother is so that I can think of a way. Little Nienmo pursed his lips tightly. He really wanted to trust him, but he was afraid that he would really hurt his mother. He paused and said, then, you have to swear that you will not harm my mother. Shinjioli did not hesitate. I swear. Little Nienmo stretched out his hand again. Pinky swear. Shinjioli was speechless. He was defeated by this kid's sudden caution. However, it was a good thing that his son was so cautious. He didn't want to be betrayed by others. He reached out his hand and made a pinky promise with his son. This was the first time he had done this, and it felt a little strange. The heavenly Tao stone looked as if it had been struck by lightning. He even forgot to refresh the screen. Little Nienmo finally let out a sigh of relief after making a pinky promise with him. We have made a pinky promise, so we are friends, right? Shinjioli paused for a moment, then smiled calmly, yes. We are friends, we are friends. The heavenly Tao stone. It sent out a bunch of exclamation marks. It turned out that even the supreme divinity could be so shameless. Little Nienmo finally told her where his mother had gone to, the underworld. Shinjioli frowned slightly. The two dolls were originally very mean creatures. Now that she had gone to the underworld, he was afraid that she would be more easily controlled by that thing. Nienmo, do you have something to contact your mother? Yes, I do. It is specially made. Shin Nienmo took out a golden red amulet. This is it. However, my mother told me not to use it casually. She told me that I can only use it to contact her when I am in trouble or danger. Chapter 2187. She said that as long as the directed audio spell is lit up, she will answer it no matter when or where she is. Shinjioli took the amulet from him and slightly sensed it. His thin lips slightly pursed. That little girl was really willing to sacrifice everything for the sake of her child. She actually used the blood from her heart to condense such an amulet. This amulet was not only connected to the amulet on her side but also to her heart. Once Shin Nienmo used this amulet, her heart would immediately sense it. Even the Forbidden Land could not prevent this feeling. However, this amulet was connected to her heart. Every time it was used, it would cause her heart to ache. No wonder she did not let little Nienmo use it easily. Shin Nienmo was worried about the safety of his mother. Is my mother really in danger? Can I use this to call her back? I can pretend that I am in great danger. He came up with a bad idea. Shinjioli immediately rejected it. No need. Do you have an ordinary directed audio spell with you to contact her? Shin Nienmo was dejected. No. He was a talkative person and liked to pester his mother. Therefore, every time Ningxiuemo went out for business, she would not give her son any direct audio spell to contact her. She did not want him to talk to her on the phone and delay her important matters. However, to be on the safe side, Ningxiuemo had left a directed audio spell with Shin Nienmo to contact him. She could contact Shin Nienmo, but Shin Nienmo could not take the initiative to contact her. Shinjioli pondered for a moment and understood the purpose of Ningxiuemo's arrangement. Looking at his son's dejected face, he could not help but raise his hand to touch his head. It's okay. With this direct audio spell, we can roughly locate her position. However, Shin Nianma's hair stood up when he was touched. He shook his head and avoided his hand. Don't touch me. He felt strange being touched by a child who looked younger than him. Shin Jiuli ignored him. With a flick of his finger, the one-way voice-transmitting spell landed on a crystal pillar. Locate her location. Let's hurry over. Shin Nianma was stunned. Who are you talking to? Shin Jiuli said indifferently, that stone can directly go to the underworld. Shin Nianma was confused. Which stone? What you are looking at is a white stone. Aren't you too one? No. Shin Jiuli was obviously unwilling to talk about it. Shin Nianma was even more confused. Suddenly, he had an epiphany. I know. It is your mother. You are its baby. Shin Jiuli was speechless. He really wanted to kick this guy off the stage for making such random deductions. The heavenly Tao stone was originally very unhappy. It had been staying here for a long time and didn't want to move. Not to mention going to the netherworld. The heavy yin energy in the underworld was not conducive to its recovery. Just as it was about to refute Shin Jiuli, it suddenly heard Shin Jiuli's words. A series of ha 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 appeared. This kid is too talented. You actually thought you were my son. However, this stone is a male. Shin Jiuli glanced at it coldly. How could a stone differentiate between male and female? The heavenly law stone had enough fun, so his mood was much better. The one-way communication spell kept spinning on the crystal pillar. After a while, the directed audio spell fell back into Shin Nianma's hand. The heavenly Tao stone could not communicate directly with Shin Nianma, so it spoke to Shin Jiuli instead. I have already checked. She is not in danger now. She may not be in danger in the underworld. You're tuning into the LoveLore Library YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.